Hey everyone, thanks so much for stopping by. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy.
During an expedition into mysterious ancient ruins, Luffy suddenly vanishes, leaving the Straw Hats frantic and desperate to find him. Instead of answers, they're pulled into something far more unsettling: Luffy's own memories. Trapped in the past with no clear way out, the crew is forced to relive moments from Luffy's childhood, moments he never shared and never planned for them to see. As they witness his early life, his bond with Ace, and the pain and loneliness hidden behind his usual grin, the Straw Hats come face to face with the emotional scars that shaped their captain. The journey becomes less about rescue and more about understanding, as each memory challenges how they see Luffy and their role in his life. Blending friendship, hurt, comfort, and deep emotional introspection, this long, heartfelt fic explores brotherhood, trauma, and unconditional loyalty, showing that some memories are buried not because they're forgotten, but because they hurt too much to share. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is Daughter of the Sea by Kuchiachi.
Chapter 1: The Mystery Rock and the Strange Ruins. The sun was shining down just as a cool sea breeze came drifting softly over the railing. Seagulls flocked above them, casting the only shadows on the deck of the Thousand Sunny. The Straw Hat Pirates were up and each was enjoying the nice day. Nami was in the library, catching up on 2 years of maps and charts from her time on Weatheria. She kept the window open so that she could enjoy the light sea breeze, for once able to relax without worrying about the change of weather thanks to that clear blue sky. Zoro was in the crow's nest, busy lifting weights, occasionally glancing out the window at the sea, just making sure there wasn't any danger. Usopp was up near Robin's flowers and Nami's orange trees, tending his garden of pop greens. He had set up a small area where he could continue to grow them, which he dubbed the Usopp Garden, and here he was able to mass-produce the pop greens without fear of ever running out. He glanced up at the bright sun and smiled widely at the warm air before he went back to work tending his precious arsenal. Chopper was on deck, lying on the grass and letting his plants dry out in this hot weather while he drank the icy lemonade that Sanji made. Not for the first time, he hated the fact that he couldn't stand the warm weather as well as his friends could. He was fine in cold weather, but if he wasn't careful, even a sunny day could be miserable. However, he grinned and bore it as he listened to Brook's music. Brook was on the swing with a cup of tea sitting next to him as he played his newest song on his guitar, Bone to be Wild. He laughed as Chopper applauded him when he finished and asked for another. Yo-ho-ho-ho, Brook laughed joyfully, strumming the guitar, as you wish. And at once, he started up with his personal favorite, Bink's Sake. Just at that moment, Sanji came out of the kitchen, a lit cigarette in his mouth, taking relief for the quick breath of fresh air after having been inside cooking over a hot stove all day. He breathed in deeply before he called out to them all, lunch will be ready in another hour. Suib PPPER, yelled another familiar voice from across the ship, and Frankie was lying out on the deck, working on his tan. Next to him, Robin giggled lightly as she stretched out on her lawn chair, enjoying a new book on history that she had bought from the last town they had been at. She reached over to take a sip of her lemonade before she went back to reading about the most common legends in the New World. While on the starboard side, the captain, Straw Hat Luffy, was enjoying fishing. He tilted his hat back until it was hanging around his neck as he began nodding his head to Brooks's music. He cast the line out as far as it would go. When he finally got a bite, he cried out excitedly, "Hey! I got something!" He then pulled with all his might, and with a great slash, something small and round came bursting out of the sea. Stretching his arm out, he grabbed hold of it, thinking it was a fish, only to pull it back and realize that it was a rock. Frowning in disappointment, he was about to throw it back when he noticed something strange about it. It looked as if it had once been a perfectly round stone and about as big as one of Nami's oranges, but at some time it had been sliced clean in half as if Zoro had gotten through with it. But what fascinated him the most was the fact that it was glowing slightly, like there was a faint light inside it. Luffy stared down at it in amazement, before he tried to take a bite out of it, only to end up almost breaking his teeth. OWWW. He yelled out loud before he looked at it again. Hey guys, check it out. What is it? Sanji asked, looking over the side with a frying pan in his hands. Did you catch something we can eat? Nah, Luffy answered, holding it up to show him. We can't eat it, I already tried. It looks really neat though. If we can't eat it, we don't need it, Sanji said firmly, turning away and heading back to the kitchen. But look, Luffy called as he held it up, it's glowing. How many rocks do you see do that? Really? Chopper cried in excitement, coming over to see it. Oh, wow, he exclaimed in wonder. It's glowing. I've never seen a glowing rock before. It's not even hot. Yeah, neat right. Luffy laughs, pulling his straw hat up and onto his head as they continued to look at it. Yo-ho-ho, Brook said, leaning over to look at it. Such a mystery, he said in awe. So amazing to see, I feel as if my eyes will pop out. Ah, not that I have eyes, yo-ho-ho-ho. Luffy laughed as he held it up to the sun to get a better look at it. But at that moment, they heard Zoro's voice calling out from above, hey. I think there's an island dead ahead. Really? An island? Luffy cried out excited, putting the rock into his pocket before he went running off to the Sunny's lion head and stared out ahead of him, squinting to see the narrow strip of land appear in front of him. Iceland. He cried out happily, his thoughts on the mystery rock, completely leaving his mind as he jumped up and down in eagerness. Island. He yelled out loudly before turning to the others. There really is an island. Quick, let's go. Full speed ahead. Hearing the shouting, Usopp turned to where the Sunnies, Braun was and called out, Nami. Do you see it? There's a. I know. Nami's amused voice called as she stuck her head out the window to look at them. Kinda hard not to with all the shouting going on. Nami Swan. Sanji cried, hearts in his eyes as he stood below her and called up, I hope you're hungry. I devote this entire meal to you. Thanks, she called with a little wave before she checked the log pose. Yep, she called, shading her eyes from the bright sun and looked ahead where the small island gradually began to grow larger by the second. One of the needles is definitely pointing to it. Oh, boy, Luffy cried out in anticipation. Our next island in the new world. I can't wait. Closer and closer they sailed, with Luffy growing more impatient with each second. Usopp and Chopper on either rise of him, also beaming and jumping around, wondering just what kind of island they were going to set foot on this time. When they were close enough, they could see that most of the island was covered in grassy fields and flowers, but they were also near a long, winding river that seemed to lead them close to a dense forest much farther back. Let's follow the river, Nami called to them, having come down and was now standing with the others. Those trees look like a good place to help hide the Sunny. Awesome, Luffy cried out, pointing to the trees eagerly. I've gotta climb one of those trees. They're huge. Yeah, Usopp agreed in relief. This looks like a quiet little island. Yeah, it's nice. Chopper added in brightly, a big grin on his face. I hope the people here are just as nice. So long as there aren't any monsters here, Usopp added worriedly, glancing around as if he thought that there were invisible monsters starting to surround them. Ah, no worries, Luffy said, now bouncing up and down on the balls of his feet, ready to get off the ship and onto the grass. A few minutes later, the ship entered the forest, and was almost completely out of sight of the ocean. Once there, the three troublemakers jumped off without a second thought. Hey, hold on, Nami called to them all as they rolled in the grass and laughed. We don't know where we are. It could be dangerous. Don't see what the problem is, Sanji said coming up with them. We can see everything here, and there doesn't seem to be other inhabitants so far. Yeah, but Sanji, Nami said in worry. This is the new world. Who knows what we could find here? Don't worry, said another voice and Zoro came sliding down from the crow's nest, a towel over his shoulders as he dried off the sweat. They can handle themselves if there's anything here. Soon, the rest of the crew got off the ship and back onto solid ground, but soon as they started exploring, the sky started to become darker and some clouds pushed and forebodingly crossed in front of the sun. Immediately Usopp stopped laughing and froze in mid-chase of playing tag with Chopper. He looked up to Nami and called, Oi. Nami, that sky doesn't look so friendly. Are we in any danger? Nami glanced up at the sky before she frowned slightly. I think that there's a good chance that there will be a storm later. If that's the case, then it's a good thing that we came here when we did. I don't want to be out in the middle of the ocean if a big storm hits. But we should be safe here, right? He called. Not, he added quickly, not that I'm scared or anything. After all, Usopp, brave warrior of the sea, always laughs in the face of danger. For now we seem to be safe, Nami called, still looking up at the sky. We might be here until we're sure the storm's passed. But as long as we keep an eye on those clouds, we should be just fine. But stay on guard, guys. Remember, this is the new world, anything can happen here. Phew, that's good. Usopp sighed in relief as he rejoined Luffy and Chopper. Does anybody know where we are? Chopper asked merrily as he watched Luffy stretch his arm out to grab a high branch and rocket it up. It doesn't look like a place where people live, Robin stated, pushing her sunglasses up onto her forehead, her book still in her hands. More likely a nesting place monsters. What? Chopper cried out in panic. You really think that there are monsters here? Yow. Robin, you really need to stop scaring them for your own entertainment, Frankie told her as she merely smiled back innocently. Usopp secretly wiped his sweat away and forced a laugh. Don't worry, Chopper, he cried out, jerking a thumb to his chest. Even if this place is swarming with bloodthirsty monsters, the brave, Pop Green's Master Usopp, will be here to take care of them all.
Yo, quick pause, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new here, share this video, and tell me in the comments which part you're loving the most.
Really? Awesome, Usopp. Chopper cheered, beaming up at him like he was a great hero. Come on then, let's go, Luffy cried out, swinging from tree to tree, without any worry in the world. After spending at least a week at sea, it felt good to be on land and exploring the island. They wandered through the grassy fields, Chopper stopping to gather flowers, and looking for any other signs of humans. Do you think there are any inhabitants here? Robin asked them. Doesn't look like it, Nami said, smiling around at them. If I had to guess, I'd say that it's uninhabited. And so far, I don't see any monsters. Just at that moment, Sanji came tearing out of nowhere, hearts in his eyes as he dropped to his knees and held out 2 large bouquets of flowers to the 2 of them. Though these flowers are beautiful, he cried out passionately, his arms outstretched to them both. They are nothing compared to the beauty of you two. Zoro, who had been leaning up against a tree, rolled his eye, sighing. Dumbass, he murmured, clearly audible, and suddenly Sanji's attitude changed from romantic to hatred as he spun around and glared at Zoro. What was that? He demanded. You heard me, Mr. Nosebleed, he shot back. You wanna go, Moss Head? That does it. I'm going to shut you up once and for all. As the 2 of them started fighting each other, Luffy burst out laughing and cried out, come on. Let's go. Let's find some meat. Some meat. And before anyone could stop him, he bolted through the grass and into the dense forest. Nami cried out, hey, Luffy, wait. But it was too late, he was long gone. Men, so typical, she sighed as she shot an annoyed glance at Zoro and Sanji, who were going at each other, with Zoro pulling out 2 of his swords and Sanji aiming a swift kick at his head. I swear, they haven't changed at all in 2 years, she hissed to Robin, who giggled as she smelled the flowers that Sanji brought them. Nami then put her long hair back into a ponytail as she called to the others, hey. You guys, someone go and see if they can find some fresh water and food. And check up on Luffy to make sure he doesn't do anything stupid. Don't see how he can in a boring place like this, Frankie said with a loud yawn. Did you forget who we're dealing with? Usopp asked, his eyebrows raised. He always gets into some kind of trouble. They spent most of the day exploring, and Nami taking measurements for her next map. They had managed to find fresh water and fruit trees, but Luffy had grown depressed not having found any good meat. Mon, Sanji, I'm hungry, Luffy whined, pouting. There's nothing else on this island. Would you calm down? Sanji snapped at him. You just ate half an hour ago. Wait until dinner. Luffy pouted at him angrily before he caught sight of Brook with his guitar. Yo-ho-ho-ho, Brook said happily. What a peaceful place. It is so calming to the eyes, ah. Not that I have eyes. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Well, the good news is that I think the storm is passing on, Nami called from on top of the hill, her telescope and papers in front of her as she kept looking through it to get the correct measurements. Once we're sure of that, we only have to wait a few more hours before we can get the log pose reset and then we can move on. Hopefully somewhere with meat, Luffy pouted. Nami rolled her eyes in a good-natured way as she put her eyes back to the eyepiece, but when she moved it slightly to get a better angle, she saw something. Whoa, what's that? She whispered to herself as she strained her eyes to make out what it was through the trees. Hey, guys, she called to them, I think I see something. They all glanced up. See something? Zoro called, having just woken up from his nap. He let out a long yawn as he asked, see what? Something to eat. Oh, Luffy called eagerly. Meat, meat, meat. Do you see any meat, Nami? No, you idiot, she called exasperated. I can't tell exactly what it is, but from here it looks like some old temple or something in the forest. Robin immediately looked up from her book. What did you say? I said that it looks like some kind of old house or temple in the middle of the forest, she called, finally looking up. It doesn't look like anything special though. Robin closed her book with a snap and stood up with gleam in her eyes. Well, might as well go and check it out while we're here, she answered with a bright smile. This is the new world after all, still unexplored territory, so it might still be filled with tons of old relics. Who knows, it could be something valuable. Berry marks suddenly appeared in Nami's eyes and she called after her, I'll come too. Later. Nami. Usopp complained from the back of the group. Any reason why you insisted that we all go in a group? In case there are some monsters, of course, she shot back at him, wiping seat from her brow as they continued their march through the forest. They each had drawn straws back at the ship, and in the end, it was Robin, Nami, Zoro, and Usopp who had won and were part of the team. Luffy hadn't bothered drawing and came with them anyway as he looked around at the dense trees with a goofy smile. Besides, I'm sure that Chopper, Sanji, Frankie, and Brook can take care of themselves. The ruins I saw are small. In fact, it was hard to say for sure they were ruins. Either way, it's worth checking it out, if only for a few minutes, Robin said, leading the way. You sure it was this way? I'm sure, Nami said with certainty. I may not be strong like you guys, but no one can read a map better than me. Luffy, who had been swinging on vines through the trees, had caught Usopp's attention and he let out a loud cry of delight and went to find vines of his own. Don't see what's so fun about that, Nami said, waving her hand dismissively. Shows how much you know, Robin laughed. There are some things that little boys never grow out of. That's for sure, Nami whispered as she watched the two swinging around like monkeys. Well, just make sure that they don't hurt themselves, Zoro. Why am I here again? He demanded crankily. After about an hour of walking, they soon came to a large clearing devoid of trees. Standing there was indeed a crumbling ruin, covered in green moss and vines. It looked like it had once been a large temple but was now falling victim to time. The walls were old and damaged, the whole building was an oval shape, almost like a mini coliseum, covered in ancient writing that was mostly worn away. Eyes bright, Robin walked forward, tracing her hand along the stone wall. Wow, Usopp said, gazing at it with interest, shielding his eyes with one hand so that he could get a better look at it without the sun's rays. Look at it, it must be several hundred years old. More or less, Robin said, wandering around the other side, examining every inch. And if I had to say, I would guess that this was, indeed, a temple. A temple? Luffy asked, having found a few fruit trees on the way here and was now enjoying apples as he watched her examine it. For what? Hard to say, Robin answered, continuing to look at it. But it's definitely seen better days. If I had to guess, I would say that this place is over 800 years old. Whoa, Usopp cried out in shock. It's that old. So there really were people on this island at one point? Zoro asked, looking up at the stone wall that showed pictures of the phases of the moon. Possible, Robin admitted. However, this seems to be the only man-made structure on this island. If this was indeed inhabited at one point, either all other traces of buildings simply wore away with time, or this place was considered special and this was the only building here to begin with. She studied the pictures of the full moon, the crescent moon, and all the way to the half moon until she noticed that there was something very strange. Running her hand over the picture of the half moon, she realized what it was. Hey, you guys, Robin called. Look at this. They all ran around to join her at the stone wall as Robin was tracing the ancient words with a finger. What is it? Zoro asked, walking forward to see what she was looking at. This appears to be some kind of door, she answered, moving back some of the moss to see. Let's see, she said softly. What's it say? Usopp asked as Luffy came jumping over. Is it something good? Luffy asked, his cheeks full of fruit. Robin frowned a little as she read out. It says, beyond these doors you will discover your greatest treasure, but to reach it, you must face the darkest shadows of your soul. Treasure. Nami cried out, her eyes becoming berry marks again. Did you just say our greatest treasure? What are we waiting for? Let's get it. It's right through this door, right? Hold on. Usopp yelled, waving his hands around dramatically. Didn't you hear what Robin said? The darkest shadows of our souls. What the hell does that mean? What's the point in waiting around wondering? Zoro said with a rather evil grin. I say we go in and see for ourselves. Treasure. Luffy said in excitement, ready for the next adventure as he took hold of the door and pushed. Hey, wait, Usopp yelled, but too late, Luffy had pushed the door open and walked in. They were all standing in the middle of a stone room, the ceiling wasn't there, and instead there was a bright sky right above them. But in front of them there wasn't anything but a small, stone platform. You mean there's really no treasure here? Nami asked, sounding disappointed and depressed. I knew it. I knew that it was too good to be true. Aw man, Luffy said angrily. You see, Usopp called to the others as Robin approached the platform and examined it. Someone must have been here a long time ago and took whatever treasure was here. Now that we're done here, let's just go. Hold on, Robin said. What is it, Robin? Zoro asked. You find something? She merely held up the stone that had been sitting at the altar and stared at it. A rock? Nami asked in frustration. What? That's it. Am I missing something? What's so special about it? But look at it, she said, holding it out for them to see. It was in the same shape as the half moon on the door, and it was glowing slightly in her hands as if there was light inside. Luffy leaned forward, a frown on his face as his brain started to hurt from trying to remember where he'd seen it before. I don't know, he finally called out. Don't know what? Zoro asked him in annoyance. But at that moment, there was a feeble light shining from Luffy's pocket. Hey, Luffy, what's that? Usopp asked and Luffy looked to see what he was talking about before he pulled out the stone. Oh, cool, he cried out. The mystery rock. The stone in his hands was glowing brightly. Where did you get that, Luffy? Robin asked at once, staring at it. It's what I found fishing. Luffy laughed, holding it up, glowing like a hot coal in his hands, but still cool to the touch. It's a mystery rock. That's strange, Usopp said, staring at the two glowing rocks in their hands. They look like they're... But then Luffy's hand shot out and took the other half of the stone in Robin's hands and grinned as he held the two pieces up. Check it out, he said happily. A perfect. Luffy wait, Usopp called in panic. Fit. And he clashed the two stones together. For a moment, nothing happened, but then the two halves melted together until you couldn't tell that they had ever been broken. That was when the light from the stone began to glow so brightly that he had to shut his eyes against them. When he opened them again, he was suddenly drifting in a sea of darkness with a single ball of light shining in front of him. Whoa, he called out. Hey guys, look at this. But as he looked around him, he realized that he was alone. Guys, he called. Where'd you all go? Do you wish to find your treasure? The light said. He asked in surprise, "Oh, you're the mystery rock, how are you talking?" He then realized what the rock said and asked eagerly, "Wait, treasure? Did you say treasure? To discover your treasure you must face your biggest regrets," the rock's light said. The grin faded from his face. "Regrets? What regrets? What are you talking about? Hey, how's a rock know how to talk anyway?" But instead of answering, it began to shine brightly again. Again, Luffy cried in frustration, shielding his eyes. "Can you stop glowing like that?" But no sooner were the words out of his mouth did the light die down little by little, but when it did, he was no longer alone, though the bright light Luffy ended up seeing a familiar face. A face that he had wished he could see again for 2 years. Messy black hair, childish freckles across his cheeks, a wide mischievous grin. Luffy's face paled as he stared at him. "Ace." He croaked out. "Is that you?" Chapter 2, Down the Rabbit Hole. Luffy was sitting on a cliff face overlooking the sea. It was a place that he was very familiar with, the same place where he once shared his dreams with both of his brothers, and later the place where Ace had made him a very important promise. Ace. He looked beside him to see Ace sitting right there with him looking like he remembered. His serious expression with a splash of freckles across his face, his 2 tattoos, the Whitebeard symbol on his back, which was once his pride, and the ASCE tattoo on his arm. He tilted his trademark orange hat with 2 blue smileys, back so that he could look at him and grinned wildly. They both sat silently on that cliff, neither one saying anything as they looked at the sparkling blue sea, a sea that they always thought of as Sabo's ocean. The soft breeze that gently blew Luffy's hair about his face as he looked at the water, remembering the promise he and Ace made when they were kids and lost Sabo. "You know," Ace said, his voice sounding as it had always been. "I'm sorry that I couldn't keep that one promise to you." "I know," Luffy answered, looking at him. "You promised me that you'd never die. I get it now that you couldn't keep it, but you did end up keeping another promise now that I'd think about it." Ace grinned back as he stood up and held out his hand to him. "I know how hard it is to say goodbye." Luffy reached up to take his hand, but as soon as he did, he could smell the scent of blood and burning skin. He could feel the hot blood splattered on his hands and arms, the heat of the fire that tore through Ace's chest. Luffy's eyes snapped open and he was gasping for breath. He wasn't on the cliffside anymore as his eyes looked around almost in a panic. Instead, he was lying on the floor of the temple that they'd been exploring before he blacked out. He was breathing hard, almost painfully, as his eyes stared up above him at the twilight sky. He breathed hard as he shut his eyes again, feeling relief. It had been a long time since he dreamt of his brother's death. After the war ended and he began his training with Rayleigh, he had those same nightmares every night for months. It was what drove him to give it his all in training and helped to calm his mind. It was the first time in a while since he had that nightmare. He opened his eyes and looked around to see that Zoro, Nami, Robin, and Usopp were there as well, and he felt that terrible weight lift off his mind at the sight of his sleeping crewmates. They all looked to be alright, just sleeping. He smiled as he started to get up, until he realized that he couldn't. He was stuck. Blinking in horror, he tried desperately to move, but his body felt as if he had heavy chains keeping him trapped there. The last time he could remember feeling like this was when he gave it his all to fight that pigeon bastard. But even then, it was because he felt weak and was in pain. Here, he was just stuck. Something was keeping him from moving. Gritting his teeth, Luffy fought with all his strength, but he might have had his limbs made of solid lead for all the good it did. It was just no use. "What's going on here?" he demanded, but when he opened his mouth, no sound came up. He froze. What was happening here? Again, he fought to raise his arms, to just move his fingers as he shouted out into the distance. But there was nothing, no voice, no movement at all. Now growing angry, he could feel the blood rushing to his head as he now, almost desperately, fought against whatever was holding him back. Just then he could hear a strange cracking sound. He stopped struggling and focused listening as his eyes looked around. He couldn't see anything, but he could sense something here. It wasn't like a wild beast feeling though, this felt like something much more different. Luffy couldn't figure out how to explain it, and then suddenly he felt something grab hold of his ankle. His eyes widened as he tried to look down to see what it was but couldn't even do that much. He was now growing angrier with each passing second as he felt the thing around his ankle wrap its way around his leg and stretching up to his waist. He then felt something twist itself around his wrist, and forced his eyes to look down. But when he looked, he couldn't see anything holding him there. All he could see was the mystery rock in his hands that was still sparkling slightly as he felt his body slowly being dragged away. Zoro. The last thing that Zoro saw before he was blinded by all the white light was Luffy putting those two rocks together. He now had a slight headache and had only just come to. He felt sick and didn't want to open his eye as he lay there on the cold stone, trying to think back to whatever it was that hit him. But as he started to drop off to sleep again, he felt as if something was creeping across the ground near him. Forcing his eye open, wincing a little at the bright light, he blinked several times to make sense of what was going on around him. He was leaning up against the stone wall of the temple that they had been at when he realized that there was something wrong. The stone altar that had been there a second ago had vanished, and instead there was a round hole in the ground, big enough to fit even Frankie inside. He tried to get up, but suddenly, he felt as if he had a whale on his chest. He was having trouble moving. He could move his head around and was glad to see that his crew was there. All 4 of them were asleep, but unharmed. Good, now if he could only get his ass moving. Just then, that horrible creeping feeling came back and he stopped as he turned his head back to the hole. There was something there, something was crawling up. He waited, almost aching for something to come up. And finally, something did. It looked like a snake at first, until he realized it was some kind of root. It was jet black and looked gnarled from ages. It came creeping out of the hole and across the temple floor. Zoro tried to move harder than ever, his hand now trying to go to his swords, but he couldn't even get his limbs to twitch as he struggled. Just then, slithering along like some beast, the root-like thing finally came towards Luffy, who was lying the closest to the hole. He was lying on his back, fast asleep, as the vine suddenly twisted itself around his ankle and bind his leg. Feeling anger surging in him, he tried to get up, and this time, he did end up finally moving, but he was lightheaded and felt sick, as he fell face first on the stone. Just what the hell was wrong with him? Why couldn't he move? He struggled to get back up, but he was struggling to keep his eye open as he felt like his mind overcome with a thick fog. Meanwhile, Luffy was still being bound tightly by the roots that crept up his body and started to circle up around his chest and arms, and then very slowly started to pull him across the ground. Luffy. Zoro called loudly, but his voice came out in a stutter as he struggled back up, only to fall back as if someone had hit him over the head with a 1,000-pound weight. The last thing that he saw before he blacked out was Luffy slowly being pulled into the hole. Later. Zoro. Zoro-san, called a familiar voice as if far away. Groaning loudly, Zoro opened his eye and blinked ahead. Standing above him was the familiar skeletal face of Brook, and though it was hard to tell with a skeleton, there was an air of worry about him. Brook. He croaked out, trying to make sense of what was going on. Oh, Brook called out happily. It is so good to see you all safe and sound. Yo-ho-ho. I was filled with such worry it felt as if my heart would burst. Though I have no heart to begin with. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Zoro forced himself to sit up, for some reason, now able to move easily, just a little tired as though he slept in for too long. Chopper, Sanji, and Frankie were all there as well and trying to wake up the others who were all still fast asleep on the ground. Blinking in confusion, he looked up to the sky to see that it was a deep red color. We were so worried about you all when you didn't come back, Brook explained, stepping back as Zoro got to his feet, a little dizzy. Sanji-san got worried about Robin-san and Nami-san, so he insisted on coming out to check on you all. Great, Zoro groaned as he got up, rubbing his head where a slight headache was taking place, quickly getting over his dizziness as he tried to remember what the hell happened. Sanji, who had been trying to wake the girls, turned to glare up at him. You idiot, he yelled. What happened here? How could you let something happen to Nami and Robin? Would you shut up, Nosebleed? He snapped at him, staring around him. Yow, Chopper, how are they? Frankie asked Chopper, who was now examining a sleeping Usopp, and looked up to them. They don't seem to be injured. It's more like they just fainted or even just fell asleep. He looked up to Zoro and said happily, I'm so relieved to see that you're okay. Yeah, Zoro said, one hand on his head. I'm feeling fine. But what happened? We were going to ask you that, Frankie stated, who had been leaning up against the temple wall, completely at ease. We were waiting for hours but you never came back. We were also worried we had to come and check what was taking so long. Chopper called as Usopp let out a groan and began to stir. Oh Usopp, Chopper said relieved. You're alive. Usopp blinked his eyes open, wincing at the bright light. I am, he repeated dully. He shut his eyes again for a moment as if he was about to fall back asleep until he sat bolt upright and stared around him in panic. What happened? Where's that light? What are we doing here? What's going on? That last part ended in a bit of a plea for help as he stared around him in worry. You don't know what happened either? Sanji demanded, looking from him to Zoro and back. What were you all doing here? Look, I told you I don't know. Zoro yelled in frustration. We were all looking around and then there was a glowing rock. A glowing rock? Chopper repeated in puzzlement. You mean like the one that Luffy found? Hey, speaking of Luffy-san, where is he? Brook asked, looking around, as if expecting to see Luffy pop up at any moment. Zoro looked up at once, suddenly remembering what happened and quickly started to search for the hole. But there wasn't anything, all he could see was the altar in the center of the temple's circle, no trace of Luffy. You mean he's not here? He asked at once. We just got here, Sanji said darkly. When we found the place, we found you all lying here like this just a few minutes ago. None of us have seen Luffy yet. So it was just the 4 of us? Usopp asked in worry, rubbing his head. But, where's Luffy? He wouldn't have just left, Frankie said as Chopper checked on the 2 women, the 2 of them slowly starting to come to as well. He's got to be around here somewhere. I don't feel him anywhere though, Zoro said, using his haki to try and sense his presence, but not picking up anyone else on the island but the 8 of them. Neither do I, Sanji agreed uncomfortably. I felt something bad a while ago and I had to know what was going on. What's this about a glowing rock? As Zoro explained about what happened, the girls had come to. Ow, ow, Nami groaned, her hand going to her head as she blinked awake. That idiot. What was he thinking? Nami. Oh no, are you alright? Sanji called as he came to her immediately. Don't worry my love, I swear that I'll be by your side until I am convinced that you make a complete recovery. Enough, lover boy, Nami snapped as she glanced around at the ruins. What? She demanded in outrage. Where's my treasure? Treasure. Chopper repeated in confusion. What treasure? The treasure that was mentioned on the door, of course. Nami told them irritably as she brushed herself off and stood up. I remember it saying something about treasure and… You still going on about that? Usopp demanded loudly. We've got bigger things to worry about. What about Luffy? Where is he? You mean he's not here? She snapped at him, running a hand through her long hair in irritation. Damn, doesn't he know what a hassle he is? I swear, I don't know what is wrong with that guy. She then heard a sigh next to her and looked over to see that Robin had just opened her eyes and was looking at her sleepily. Oh, Robin, she said anxiously, going to her side to see if she was alright. Robin-chan, my dear, how are you feeling? Are you sure that you're okay? Sanji said as Robin sat up and got quickly to her feet. What just happened? She asked. We're still in the ruins, Nami explained, now rubbing her forehead to clear her thoughts. Apparently after we saw that light we passed out and now Luffy's missing. I don't know what to do with him. No, Robin said, turning back to the altar. This isn't good. We've got to find him now. What's wrong, Robin? Chopper asked in a scared voice. Did something really bad happen? Robin knelt by the shrine and looked at the ancient writing that was covering the platform. She bit her lip and said, I was afraid of this. What? Nami asked. What are you afraid of? Yeah, 'cause you're kind of freaking me out, Usopp said, hiding behind Frankie. This is a bad place, isn't it? Rather than answer, Robin reached into her bag and pulled out the book that she had been reading for the last few days. She flipped through it, searching for something as Zoro asked, Robin, you mind telling us what this is all about? Here, Robin said standing up and turning towards them. I was afraid of this. I thought that this sounding familiar. These ruins are part of an ancient temple that once housed the reminiscent stone. The what? They all repeated in confusion. What's the reminiscent stone? Sanji asked. It's a magical artifact that acts like a sort of key, she answered without looking up. According to this, years ago there was some kind of door that was locked and the stone that acted as the way to open it was broken apart. Whatever was sealed here was so powerful that it was decided to be closed for good and then the key was broken into two halves. One half was kept here in the temple, but the other was thrown out to sea. What? Chopper yelled out in fear. You mean that rock that Luffy fished out earlier was? That idiot, Zoro groaned, smacking himself in the face. Leave it to him to fish out something dangerous like that. What was it talking about treasure then? Nami demanded at once. It said so on the door here, didn't it? That there was treasure. Yeah, but it all said something really creepy with it. Usopp yelled out. Something about facing the darkest shadows of your soul, Robin recited softly. Well, what's that supposed to mean? Sanji asked, lighting another cigarette. I don't like the sound of that. Whatever it does mean, it doesn't sound good, Frankie said with a frown. So not cool. So how about we just find Luffy and get off this place then? Usopp suggested. I mean, it only takes half a day for the log post to reset, right? As soon as we find the captain, we clear out. Yeah, I'm all for it, Nami agreed, now looking around anxiously. Hey wait, Zoro demanded. What was so dangerous about that stone that they had to break it apart and then separate it? I'm not entirely sure, Robin confessed as she flipped through the book. According to this, it states that it depends on the one who unlocked the door. Unlocks the door, Nami repeated. There's something to do with this temple and the stone, she said shaking her head, not having the slightest idea to what this all meant. There's some kind of gate that's here. She gasped as she stared at the page in amazement. What? Usopp cried out loudly, sounding close to freaking out. What is it? If I'm right, Robin said anxiously, looking at them all, then this island could just be the legendary land called Agartha. Agartha, Nami repeated, what the heck is that? I think I've heard of it, Sanji said coming forward. I think I might have read about it as a kid. Isn't Agartha the name that's used to describe the land of the dead? Land of the dead. Brook, Usopp, and Chopper cried out at once in full panic mode. No, Robin said at once, still in her usual calm tone. Agartha isn't that. It isn't, Chopper asked, sighing in relief. What a relief. Rather, Agartha is the land that holds the gateway to the land of the dead, she finished and they screamed out loud again. The gateway. Zoro repeated, his eyebrows raised. What's that mean? Frankie asked, looking lost. Robin flipped open the book and read out. Long ago when humankind was young, there was one place where it was possible to reunite with lost loved ones. Agartha, the island where broken hearts can mend, that's what it says. Apparently this temple was built because of that. This temple is some kind of gateway that connects to the other side. The other side? Nami asked in wonder and horror. Does that mean that we can see people who died again? I honestly don't know, Robin said, now sounding disappointed, as if upset that she didn't know the answers. There's not much else on it. just something about a gate of life and death. Those who have the key are taken to this gate and are confronted with the memories of life while staring down death. But it doesn't say much else. Okay, Usopp said, gulping. I don't know anything about any of this, but why don't we just find Luffy and leave this creepy, land of the dead, stuff behind? I agree with Usopp-san. Brook called, holding up his hand as if voting. I certainly don't want to come face to face with a ghost. Aren't you technically undead? Zoro asked, annoyed. But what about Luffy? Chopper asked anxiously. I think I know, Zoro told him. As they all looked, he quickly explained about what he saw. I don't know if it was a dream or not, but I saw some kind of roots dragging him underground, but that hole isn't here anymore. Sanji walked over and began to examine the altar, looking at it from every angle. I don't know what to tell ya, he called. But I really don't see anything here. He stood up and smiled. Which means, don't you dare, Robin warned him, her eyes narrowed dangerously. I'm worried about Luffy too, but don't you dare destroy anything. Yes, Robin dear, Sanji cried out, hearts in his eyes. You all hear that? He demanded them all. Anyone puts one stone out of place here, they'll have to deal with me. But Sanji, we have to find Luffy. Usopp said pleadingly. It's that idiot's fault for getting himself into this, Sanji said, now standing in front of the altar like a guard. If Robin-chan says not to touch anything, then we won't. I never said that, Robin said, walking up and kneeling down to run her hand along the altar. I merely don't want you to destroy this place. She then pulled out a notebook and began to look through it as she studied the ancient writing that was mostly worn away. Darkest shadows of your soul. She repeated to herself, reciting what had been written on the door, but what does that all mean? Apparently there's some kind of price to pay at the gates of life and death. A price? Brook asked softly. Why do I not like the sound of that? Zoro said, now looking angry. Yow, it doesn't surprise me, Frankie sighed in annoyance. Nothing comes without a price in this world. You mean you have to give something in order to meet with lost loved ones? Nami asked uncertainly, a deep desire to see her adopted mother once again, if only for a moment. Yeah, is it really possible? Chopper asked, his eyes watering up at the thought of being able to see Dr. Halulik again. This is all guesswork mostly, Robin confessed, pushing up her sunglasses as she stared at the words on the stone. Well, what is it that you have to give up, Robin-san? Brook asked curiously. More like to share, Robin said, frowning as she wrote something down in the notebook. Share, Usopp repeated, not having the slightest clue to what she was saying. Yes, Robin answered, apparently, you have to share your memories of being alive. That's all it says. What, you mean tell these ghosts your life story or something? Usopp asked confused. That's all it says, Robin answered, slowly getting up, still looking through her notes. I guess that there's someone that Luffy wants to meet again and is probably sharing his memories as we speak so that he can speak to that person again. If Luffy had the key, then he would most likely be taken to the gate. What happens after that, I can't say. Just great, Nami called out sarcastically. So now Luffy's who knows where, and we have no idea how to find him. Usopp moved back, pulling out his slingshot as he looked around, now wishing he still had his old exorcism gear on to ward off the evil spirits. Chopper moved a little closer to Zoro as they argued to what it was they were supposed to do. You idiot, why didn't you do something? Sanji yelled at Zoro. You're a swordsman, right? Why didn't you cut up those roots or something? Hey, I told you, didn't I? Zoro yelled in annoyance, feeling a strong urge to kill the cook. I don't know if it was a dream or not. All I know for sure is that couldn't move for some reason. It felt like I had a whale or something on me. I couldn't move a muscle. Apparently it was the weight of the burdens you carry through life that weighed you down, Robin answered as if it was obvious. The what? Zoro repeated as Robin continued to flip through the book. According to this, those selected to go to the gate are suddenly weighed down by all the burdens they carry in life and are unable to move as they are taken to the gate's entrance. Only once they arrive is the weight taken off them. But I wasn't taken to some gate, now was I? Zoro demanded. I just watched. I don't know what those roots were or where that hole came from. Just what is all this? I've already told you everything in here, Robin said sadly, shutting the book again. Without some kind of key, there's not much we can do. So what? We're stuck here waiting until Luffy's done in there? Sanji asked as Usopp kept walking around in a circle, a pop green in his slingshot, just waiting for an attack. If we could figure out how to open the doorway here, we may be able to follow him, Robin said softly as Usopp cried out in panic. No, he yelled out at the top of his lungs, this island is cursed. Do we really want to risk being cursed ourselves? He stopped to take a deep breath and finished, now, why don't we just wait back at the ship? I mean, Luffy's strong. He can take care of himself, right? How much trouble could he get into at the gateway to hell? They all looked at each other. We've got to find him now, Zoro said, looking around, trying to feel something, anything that lurked on the island. Search everywhere for some way in. Nami called. Don't leave any stone unturned. You can count on me. Sanji cried, love struck. We really should find him, Robin said softly. It would be bad if Luffy was cursed by spirits of the dead. Robin, please don't say creepy things like that, Usopp whispered as Frankie moved up his sunglasses so that his eyes could do a quick scan of the surrounding area. You don't really think that there could be real ghosts, right? Chopper asked, looking a little blue in the face at the thought. Hard to say, Frankie said, so far, I'm not picking up anything. The land of the dead, Brook sighed as he put his hand on the altar and leaned heavily against it. It feels so long ago that I was there myself. It is a frightening place, I think. You think? Usopp repeated with a squeak. I'm afraid I don't really remember too much about it, Brook confessed. I vaguely recall walking down a warm tunnel with a glorious, shining light, but that's about it. Creepy, Chopper asked as the others fanned out to look. Brook sighed and had pushed himself up, but as he did, he accidentally ended up pushing the altar slightly and he almost fell over from shock. Usopp, who had his back to Brook, jumped at the sudden noise and cried out in alarm, ghosts from beyond the grave. They're here. As he and Chopper screamed out, the others looked back in time to see that the stone had been covering something. Oh, Brook called. There really is a hole here. At once, Sanji and Zoro came over to continue pushing it until the entire hole was uncovered and they were all staring down it. It was impossible to say just how deep it was because there was no sign of the bottom. Usopp gulped as he looked down and whispered, it's even darker than the deep sea. Appropriate place for the pathway to hell, Zoro said calmly. How can you say something like that so calmly? Usopp yelled at him, pointing down the hole. It's darker than dark. There's no telling how deep this thing goes. And you're telling me that Luffy's down there? Yeah, Zoro said, standing up straight. So who wants to go down and check things out? You have to be crazy. Usopp cried out. WHO in their right minds would want to go to hell. So you just want to leave Luffy down there? Frankie asked, which shut Usopp up at once. What makes you so sure that he's down there? Nami questioned, looking down the hole anxiously like she expected something to come crawling out. They all looked at each other and nodded together. Yep, there was no doubt in their minds that Luffy was definitely in there. I'll go, Zoro volunteered. Me too, Sanji sighed, breathing out the smoke from his cigarette. You can count me in. Frankie called out, striking his pose. Robin giggled. Sounds like fun. You're going too, Robin. Nami cried out in horror. It's not every day you get to visit hell, Robin answered with a bright smile. I will go too, Brook said at once, his guitar in hand as he strummed along. I will be my newest song. Pathway to hell. So you guys plan on leaving us here? Chopper asked with a gulp. Not unless you want to come with us, Zoro said, walking up to stand on the edge of the hole and look down. Do what you want. Either come with us, or go back to the ship. He took a deep breath, and before anyone could say another word, he jumped down, the darkness of the hole swallowing him up like some kind of monster. Zoro. Usopp called after him, but they didn't get a word. It was truly as if Zoro had been swallowed up by another world. Well, Robin said smiling as she came up, sticking her book and notebook back into her bag. What are we waiting around for? And quick as a flash, she jumped in after Zoro, a slight giggle escaping her mouth as she did. Wait for me, Robin-chan. Sanji cried, and jumped right after her, swooning as he did. Robin, Sanji, Chopper cried out fearfully. Yeah, Frankie called happily as he jumped, don't forget the SUUUPPPPPERRR armor me. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Brook laughed as Frankie disappeared and the other three were now looking scared. Never a dull moment in this crew. Brook, wait, Usopp gasped out. Are you sure you want to go? Yo-ho-ho-ho. I've already been to the land of the dead, Usopp-san, Brook laughed. I don't see why I should be afraid. And with those words he jumped, laughing all the way down, his voice disappearing down the hole until fading away like some kind of echo. That left the three of them still standing up watching. Nami gulped as she said, I think they've got it. I mean, it shouldn't take long for them to find Luffy and come back, right? Yeah, Usopp said, optimistically. We could wait for them back at the Sunny for them. I mean, it's not like we need their protection anymore, does it? Yeah, Chopper cried out proudly, his two hooves up in the air. I'm a full-grown man now. You don't need to worry. Right, Nami said, looking up at the darkening sky. I'm sure that it shouldn't take them too long. As they all got up, Usopp took a step back and ended up stepping on a twig, breaking it in half. The noise alone was enough to startle Usopp as he jumped up, tripped and ended up falling head over heels into the hole. OCRAPPPPPPP was his cry as he fell in. Usopp, Chopper cried out, and without thinking, jumped in after him. Chopper, Nami cried as she watched their doctor tumble through the dark. Now it was just Nami all alone. She stared around her in worry before she sighed. Luffy, I'm going to kill you for this, she promised as she closed her eyes and jumped in after them. Disclaimer: this story do not belong to me. The author is Warm Memories and Brotherly Bonds by RoseDragonWitch. Chapter 3, Tough Love and Dream Searching. Down, 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 they all fell. The darkness pressing in on all sides as they almost drifted, the wind causally slowing as each one of them dropped. But there wasn't anything that could be seen, nothing but darkness everywhere. Just as Zoro was starting to get bored, he felt his feet suddenly touch down, almost gently. He cautiously stepped around to see that he was standing on some sort of floor, though he couldn't tell what it was. "What is it?" called a voice above him, and he glanced up in time to see Robin there, falling like a leaf as she landed lightly on her feet as he had. "Now this is interesting," she smiled, looking around curiously. "I sorta expected hell to be a little hotter than this," Zoro said as Sanji came falling next a few feet away. Frankie and Brook soon dropped in, followed by a screaming Usopp, Chopper, and Nami as well. Zoro ignored them all as he kept his hand on his swords, ready to draw at a moment's notice, keeping a firm look around, trying to sense something. But there didn't seem to be anything as he stepped cautiously away from the crew. "Yo-ho-ho-ho, so you all decided to come with us after all?" Brook called happily to the other three, who were sticking close to them all. "Not by choice," Usopp snapped back, his slingshot in hand as he looked around. "Where are we? Why is it so dark? There doesn't seem to be anything else down here," Sanji said, reaching out with Haki to feel anyone else, only to come up empty. "No, I don't sense anything but the 8 of us. Can't find Luffy at all," Zoro added as he came back to the group. "But there's something else down here, I can't explain it, but it's not normal." "I agree," Sanji said, an odd shiver going up his spine. "It's like this darkness is alive or something and it's watching us." Alive," Chopper croaked out, sticking close to Robin as he looked around fearfully. Nami reached out to look at her hands. "Why is it that we can see ourselves and each other, but can't see anything else?" "No clue," Robin answered, looking at her hands as well. "But it's like we're glowing enough that we can see ourselves. If only we had more light." "Did you forget about me?" Frankie asked, stepping forward confidently. "Luckily, I have something just in case of emergencies like this," he proclaimed proudly before pulling his shirt back and crying out, "Frankie nibble lights." "That is still too weird," Usopp said with a sweat drop. But as Frankie shined the light, it was as if it was swallowed up as well. It stretched on in the distance, but there honestly wasn't anything there. "I don't like this place," Chopper said fearfully. "I wanna just find Luffy and leave." "We all do," Nami said nervously as she looked back up to see if she could see the hole that they came down from. But to her horror, there wasn't any light above them. "We must be pretty deep if we can't even see the hole," Robin answered calmly. "Yeah, how are we supposed to get back out?" Usopp asked almost squeakily, as he looked up too. "I don't see where we came out of." No one answered him as they continued to try to find something in this void. It was disturbing to say the least, because in the suffocating, squeezing darkness, there is nothing, no warmth, no air, just emptiness. Brook shivered a little. "This place makes me feel goosebumps on my skin, ah. Not that I have skin." But he didn't laugh as much as he would normally. He didn't like this place. It reminded him painfully of those lonely years he spent trapped in that dark fog. "Where are we?" Nami asked, sticking close to Sanji, whose eyes were in the shape of hearts again at having Nami so close. "You don't think we're all dead, do you?" Usopp cried out dramatically. "But I don't wanna be dead." Chopper screamed out. "Neither do I," Brook called fearfully. Though I am technically Dia." "Don't worry," Robin said calmly again. "I'm pretty sure that we haven't died, but where we are now, I can't say." "Where's this gate thing you were talking about?" Frankie asked, still trying to shine his nipple lights as far out as he could, desperate to see something. "I don't know any more than you do about this," Robin answered him simply. "So what now? We just sit here in the dark?" Zoro demanded. But almost as soon as he opened his mouth to say the words, the darkness faded and suddenly they were standing in what appeared to be a thick jungle. Trees appeared out of nowhere and sounds of birds began to cry from above as a bright sun shone down on all of them. "Wow!" Chopper shouted in astonishment, stars in his eyes. "That's incredible. Amazing." Brook yelled. He stared around in wonder. "It's SUUUUPER cool effect." Frankie called, striking his pose. "I've never seen anything like this," Nami whispered, gasping at the sudden bright sunlight, forced to shield her eyes again. "Okay, while I'm glad to get out of that shithole we were just in," Sanji said at once, "but would someone mind telling me where we are?" "Please don't tell me we've passed on to heaven," Usopp whispered, the shock of suddenly being back in the light wearing off. "If we did, that sure was quick," Zoro said so that Chopper and Usopp cried. "But I doubt that we died that easily." "We can't be in heaven," Sanji said darkly. "Mosshead's still with us." "What was that, you crap cook?" Zoro growled at him threateningly. "Would you both please stop fighting for once?" Usopp begged. "Let's get out of this freaky place." "Alright, then tell us how you suggest we do that." Zoro snapped at him. "I don't know," Usopp yelled back. "That's why I'm asking you all." "At least it's nice and quiet," Chopper spoke up. "Yo-ho-ho, it's wonderful here," Brook agreed. "Such a nice place. What do you think, Nami-san?" He looked back in time to see that she had wandered a few feet away and was now kneeling down in front of some large wildflowers. "I've never seen flowers like this," Nami whispered, holding out her hand and attempted to pick one, only to have her fingers go right through them as if she was made of nothing but air. They all froze as they stared at the scene. For a moment, they all seemed to be too stunned to speak, and then, "EHHHHHHHHH!" Brook cried out in panic. "We're ghosts. We must have died and become ghosts." Brook, Chopper, and Usopp began to scream in panic, not knowing what to do, and Chopper was now crying until Nami screamed out, "Shut up all of you. We can't all be dead, can we?" "I don't know," Sanji said, unusually casual as he looked to Brook and asked, "Is this what the afterlife looks like?" "I don't really remember, Sanji-san," Brook admitted, tilting his head in confusion. "But I don't remember any forest." "No," Robin said, looking around. "I have a theory where we might be, but if I'm right, then it doesn't actually help us." "Well, where do you think we are?" Frankie asked, but before he could finish asking, they heard something coming up from behind them. "What's that?" Chopper cried, hiding behind Zoro again, "Some kind of monster." "I knew it," Usopp gasped out in his usual doom and gloom speech. "It's some kind of monster from hell coming here to make sure that we're all dead." "Sounds more like a person to me," Nami whispered, pulling out her weapon and getting ready to attack. Through the trees, the figure of a tall, tan, broad-chested, muscular man came slowly towards them. He had black hair and goatee, with whitening sideburns and carrying a familiar scar on his left eye. Nami gasped, her eyes widening in recognition. Garp. It was indeed the marine hero, though they had only seen him once, he certainly left an impression. He wasn't in his standard marine clothes this time though, he was in a simple t-shirt and shorts, carrying a bottle of liquor in his hands as he hummed quite contentedly to himself as he approached them. That is him," Usopp whispered in astonishment. "But what's he doing here?" "Well, I guess this really is hell," Zoro said darkly, flicking his thumb a little on his sword hilt so that the blade could be seen, prepared for the worst. "If the Marines are here hunting us and all, you know him?" Brook asked them all, realizing how they were all staring at Garp with shock and horror. "I admit his name does sound familiar, but..." "Vice Admiral Garp," Robin said lightly. "A marine hero, as well as Luffy's grandfather." "Grandfather?" Brook repeated in amazement. "Luffy-san's grandfather is a marine hero." "I know, that's what we all said when we found out," Sanji said lightly, letting his cigarette fall from his mouth as he moved forward, ready to attack. "You expect Luffy's bloodline to be filled with nothing but criminals." "Well, his father sorta makes up for that," Frankie said, holding up his arm, ready to fire. "Dragon," Robin muttered softly. "Yeah, him," Frankie muttered. "I mean, he is classified as the most wanted man in the world for a reason now, isn't he? Isn't there anyone normal in Luffy's family?" Usopp whispered as Garp stepped closer and closer. "But that's not the point. We have to deal with this maniac." "Don't know," Zoro said, pulling out two swords now, since Garp showed no signs of stopping. "But if he wants to fight, we'll be more than happy to oblige." "Oi, Garp," Sanji yelled. "Wada want with us now?" He had expected Garp to stop walking and address him. Perhaps to laugh or taunt them, but surprisingly, he did nothing of the sort as he came closer. "What's with him?" Usopp asked nervously. "Why doesn't he answer us?" "Yeah, you think he'd be asking us where his grandson is or something," Brook stated, his hand still on his own weapon, ready to draw it. Zoro frowned. Something wasn't right here, he couldn't sense anything coming from this man, how was that possible? Just when Garp was a few feet away, they all held up their weapons, but Robin held up her hand. "Wait," she said, stepping forward to face him alone. "Wait for what?" Frankie demanded. "He's gonna." "It's all right," Robin answered, standing still as Garp continued on his way, not even glancing at her. "Watch." And just like that, Garp walked right up to her, and then right through her like how Nami did with those flowers. Everyone's jaw dropped as they stared at her as she only smiled. "I thought so," she answered softly. "What the hell was that?" Usopp cried out, moving away from Garp as he walked past them, who didn't react at all, not even noticing the fact that he just walked through someone. "I thought something was strange here," Robin said lightly, turning back towards them, and pulling the book out of her bag again. "I remembered what it said in this book, that you must share your memories before you are able to speak with a lost loved one. I had a feeling that this was the case." "Wait, a memory?" Chopper asked, still looking freaked out. "You mean that Luffy's grandpa wasn't real? Garp looks a lot younger than when we met him at Water 7 2 years ago, doesn't he?" Robin said, all of them turning to watch Garp continue on his way through the jungle, apparently looking for something. "I took a chance, and I see now that I was correct. These must be memories." "I still don't get it," Frankie said predictably. "Think of it as like a dream," Robin answered as she looked around her in new interest. "Oh, so we're all asleep right now?" Chopper asked, sighing in relief. "That's good to know." "A dream," Zoro repeated sarcastically. "Then tell me how we're all dreaming the same thing." "Everything we see here is all history," Robin answered, now following after Garp. "This must be part of Luffy's past that we're seeing." "Okay," Zoro said darkly. "But how is this possible?" They all followed after Robin as she continued to flip through the book. "It says that you need to share your memories of being alive when you arrive at the gate of life and death. So I guess this is what it's happening. I think it's safe to say we're seeing into Luffy's memories if I'm correct." "Wah," Chopper called out. "So we're inside Luffy's head." "It was dark and empty enough to be," Sanji stated, thinking of the darkness they'd seen before. "Yo-ho-ho-ho," Brook laughed. "Sanji-san is harsh, but what about Luffy?" Usopp questioned, gripping his hair anxiously. I mean, he's okay, right? I don't know, Robin answered with a sigh. All I know is that this must be part of Luffy's mind. His memories, so of course it makes sense that no one can see or hear us or why we can't touch anything. We're merely witnessing a part of our captain's past. Okay, Sanji said, looking around at the trees. So that means that nothing can see or hear us here, heck they can't even touch us. That I do get, but how do we get out of here? And where's Luffy? Suddenly, Garp stopped moving, and they all froze, forgetting that if this was a memory, he shouldn't be able to hear them. There you are. Garp called loudly to something that had moved among some thick bushes. Come out here. Suddenly a small figure, dirty and tired, came stumbling through the thick foliage and they all gasped at what they saw. It was Luffy, but a child Luffy who looked no older than 4 or 5 years old. He was tiny, dressed in a torn shirt with the picture of a seagull on it, and dirty white shorts. He wasn't wearing his signature straw hat and he didn't have the scar under his eye as he came towards Garp, looking starved. As if he had been running around in the jungle all night. I guess that settles it, Zoro said, staring at Luffy's small figure as he pulled himself free of the plants and came up to his grandfather. Well, wasn't he cute? Robin smiled as she looked at the little boy. Yo-ho-ho, Brook said, leaning over so that he could get a better look at Luffy. Luffy-san, he said. You got so small. Yeah, but what happened to him? Sanji asked, almost gaping at what he was seeing. He looks like he hasn't slept or eaten for days. Gee grandpa, Luffy stuttered tiredly, coming to a stop in front of the intimidating figure of Garp. Now, how was your weekend in the jungle? Garp asked happily, patting Luffy fondly on the head. I didn't sleep at all, Luffy complained as his stomach roared with hunger. And some giant bears tried to eat me, he added as he put his hands on his stomach. Garp laughed as he clapped him on the shoulder. But you survived. That's what matters. He doesn't seem concerned that his grandson was almost eaten, does he? Frankie asked deadpan. Chopper came up close to Luffy, who didn't even look at him, and looked at the cuts. These are some pretty bad cuts. He cried out worriedly. He needs them checked out. What does Garp mean by his weekend in the jungle? Usopp repeated, frowning. He's making it sound like he just left Luffy out here in the jungle and expected him to survive on his own. Didn't Garp mention that he used to leave Luffy in the jungle at night when we met him back at Water 7? Sanji asked, trying hard to think back. He said what? Brook asked in surprise. Nami clapped a hand to her forehead. So we're back that far in Luffy's memories. Luffy was now sucking his thumb as his grandfather took him to a small clearing through the thick trees, where they all got a surprise to see several large monkeys there. Garp then practically threw Luffy at them, yelling at him to start fighting. What? Chopper demanded furiously. He's making him fight without checking out those cuts. They could get infected if not treated. Especially with all this humid air and bacteria in the jungle. But Luffy didn't complain as he started to fight. He was slow and clumsy compared to the monkeys, but he did alright dodging them at first. But soon, he was hit from all sides until he was forced to do a face plant and skidded to a stop at his grandfather's feet. Can someone explain to me what's going on? Frankie whispered as Luffy jumped back up to his feet and complained, rubbing the back of his head, Grandpa. Why do I have to fight these guys? That's what I want to know, Usopp whispered. I mean, he's doing pretty good so far, but he's just a little kid. The monkey behind him was making noises and they looked to see him in a boxing stance, throwing out punches as if to challenge him again. Training, was Garp's answer. I'm almost afraid to ask for what, Frankie said. Training, Luffy asked confused. But I'm hungry. And I'm tired of being hit. Even back then, his stomach comes first, Sanji sighed, running his fingers through his hair. I guess some things never change. Well, to be fair, apparently he's been in this place for a couple days with no food or sleep, Robin pointed out just as 2 more monkeys joined the first, wanting for a fight. Garp said, don't be soft. One day you're gonna become the world's strongest marine. Marine? Yeah, right, Nami said as the rest of the Straw Hats nodded behind her. I can't picture Luffy in some stuck-up place like Marine headquarters following rules, do any of you? No, they all said at once and without any hesitation. Apparently Luffy thought so too. Marine, he repeated before frowning and said, I'm not gonna be a Marine, I'm gonna be a pirate. He's got guts even back then, Zoro smirked, looking at Garp's angry expression. What? He demanded, now ignoring all the other monkeys and shouted out, don't be stupid. He then raised his fist and punched Luffy so hard that he was knocked back and a giant bump appeared on his head. Ouch! Luffy shouted out, his eyes watering in pain. Grandpa's fist hurts the most. The old man sure is quick to resort to violence, isn't he? Usopp said nervously. Makes me wonder how Luffy lived past his childhood with a Gramps like that. I don't believe it, Nami hissed in outrage. He leaves his grandson all alone in the jungle for a few days, before tells him to start fighting, and then hits him. I guess we now know where Luffy gets some of his endless will to live from, Sanji said, shaking his head, suddenly reminded of the training he had with Zeph when he was a kid. And I thought the old geezer was bad when he was teaching me to cook. Suddenly, it went dark again. Oh, no, Usopp yelled in worry. What's happening now? But before anyone could come up with an answer, everything came back into focus and they were standing over the edge of a deep ravine in the ground. Wow! Chopper cried, looking down the hole. That's really deep. Why do I not like where this is going? Zoro asked, his eye looking around and soon spotted them coming. Garp was there arguing with Luffy, who was dragging his feet, trying to prevent his grandfather from taking him somewhere. He latched onto a giant rock they were passing and held on for dear life as Garp pulled on his arm. Looks like we're about to see another training session, Sanji said, not sure if this was going to be pleasant what they were about to see. Why doesn't Luffy-san's arm stretch here? Brook asked, seeing that Luffy's arm remained as it was as Garp pulled him free. I think it's safe to say that this must be before he ate the devil fruit, Robin said watching them as they approached the ravine. Wow, it's hard to picture a Luffy who isn't made of rubber, Usopp said, thinking about it. Well, he wasn't always made of rubber, Robin smiled. But why are they here? Brook asked hesitantly, as they finally arrived at the fissure. Granddad, Luffy called out, still fighting tooth and nail to pull himself free of Garp's hold, I don't want to do training today. And that is what makes you weak. Garp snapped as he held his grandson up by his shirt over the fissure and looked down. What is this place? Luffy asked nervously, his feet dangling over the hole. This is known as the bottomless ravine, Garp said conversationally. Though it isn't technically bottomless, apparently, if you fall in, it would take about 3 days for you to hit bottom so you have plenty of time to try and get out. Wait, what? Luffy yelled in panic as Garp let go and Luffy fell with a scream. He didn't. Usopp yelled, griping his hat in horror, watching Luffy's tiny form disappear into the dark. Was he trying to kill him? I can't believe that he dropped his own grandson down like that. Nami yelled as the rest of the crew stared at Garp. This explains a lot now, Zoro said, in an impressed voice. Dealing with this every time you see your grandfather would make you hate those family reunions, wouldn't it? How can you say that? Brook yelled in dismay. He could have died from that. 3 days to hit the bottom. That would kill anyone. And Luffy-san's not made of rubber yet. How can anyone do that to their own grandson? Nami repeated to herself as Chopper gulped. Luffy's grandpa is scary. He whispered. I hear ya, Chopper, Sanji agreed as the image slowly faded away again until they were standing outside a tavern with the name, Party Bar, hanging over the entrance. The Party Bar, Robin repeated, looking up and down the road, before looking up, able to see the ocean from the little pub on the hill. Sanji whistled loudly at the view. There was a beautiful sunset along the horizon. The sky was filled with color, orange faded to purple as the sun receded across the glassy, blue-green. They could all hear the sounds of waves washing slowly against the shore and the gentle tumble of the scattered windmills echoing throughout the village. It's so pretty here, Chopper said, his eyes bright at the sparkling sea. It kinda reminds me of my hometown, Usopp said smiling, and suddenly feeling a little homesick as he thought of Syrup Village. But, does anyone have an idea where we are? They looked around at the houses along the way, the few people that were now heading home, cows behind the fences enjoying the grass before heading off, the spinning windmills. Windmills, Nami said softly, watching them. Didn't Luffy say his hometown was full of windmills? You think this is it? You mean this is Luffy's home? Chopper asked. Not a bad place, Zoro said, looking around. Looks kinda boring but, suddenly a young woman came out of the bar they were standing next to with a broom in her hands as she began to sweep the front way. She was a very pretty girl with dark green hair that fell to her shoulders and tucked underneath a bandana. She was humming softly to herself as she worked, clearly not able to see them any more than Luffy or Garp could. As soon as he saw her, Sanji's eyes turned into hearts as he twirled over to her, his hands over his heart as if he was in great pain. My, what a beauty, he whispered, his heart feeling like it would burst from his chest from happiness. It would be my greatest pleasure to take this off your. But as he reached out to touch her hand, his own went right through it and he gasped before he fell to his knees in depression, tears in his eyes. It's not fair, he whispered, softly hitting the ground. Such a beautiful lady and she can't even. I guess you forgot that she can't hear or see any of us. Usopp asked him, his face devoid of all pity as he looked at him. Stupid cook, Zoro grumbled. What did you just say, Moss head? Sanji cried, jumping to his feet, ready for a fight. You heard me, Zoro shot back, his hands going for his swords again. Enough, Nami screamed. What do we have to do? Put you both in time out. While this is interesting, don't you think it's about time that we try to find a way out of this place? They stopped arguing and looked up to her, forgetting where they were for a moment. I don't know where we are, or how this is possible, Nami went on, but we shouldn't be waiting our time here like this. We've got to try and find a way out of here, find Luffy, and get back to the ship. All of this is really starting to creep me out. Yes, Nami swwwwaannnnn, Sanji cried out, smiling as he came before her. Your wish is my command. But Brook asked slowly, how do we get out of here? My eyes don't see a way out, do yours? Not that I have eyes to begin with. Yo-ho-ho-ho. Stop messing around, Nami snapped. Joking isn't going to get us out of this place any quicker now, is it? But before she could really start telling them off, a familiar voice shouted out, "Makino." They looked up in time to see Luffy running out of nowhere, dirty and covered with bruises as he went straight for the woman at the bar. She braced herself just in time to avoid being knocked over as he lunged for her leg, terror on his face as he hung onto her skirt. "Luffy, what?" she asked as she heard a familiar booming laugh coming up the road. "Sounds like Garp's coming," Frankie stated. "Poor kid, wonder how he got out of that ravine though." "Hide me," Luffy begged the woman, looking back to the road. "Gramps, he's coming." She blinked before she took his hand and led him inside the tavern. They followed them inside the warm-looking building, past all the chairs and tables until they got to the bar. They watched as the woman took him and told him to duck down and be quiet until she got rid of Garp. Nami watched as Luffy sat on the floor, holding a chubby finger to his lips as if to shush her. She had to fight a smile. Why couldn't Luffy still be this cute? Suddenly, the two doors burst open and Garp came in. "Is he in here?" Garp asked as he came up to the woman named Makino, who stood up straight and tall. "Training hard, Garp-san?" she asked politely, stealthily covering up the squeak of fear that came from near her feet. "That brat, I never had this problem with Ace," Garp sighed as he sat down at one of the tables and pulled out a bag of rice crackers and taking a big bite. "What is it now?" she asked, still smiling, and Sanji swooned at the sweet smile she had. "Makino," Garp grunted, not answering the question. "Did Luffy come here? I go to the trouble of gathering all those balloons, and he insists on running and hiding from training." "Balloons?" Chopper asked in confusion. "Why would you need balloons for training?" "I don't know, but I don't think we'll like the answer," Usopp said, feeling sweat fall from his face, feeling bad for Luffy having to put up with this. "Balloons for what?" Makino asked, obviously wondering the same thing. "Flight training," he answered simply. "I'm trying to figure out what else I can do since he's such a horrible swimmer." "I can't too swim," Luffy yelled, before clamping his hands over his mouth. "What a big mouth," Sanji sighed, smacking himself in the face. "You'd think that he'd keep quiet." "Aha," Garp called out, getting up to lean over the bar to grab him, but Luffy was faster as he clambered out of the way by a hair and ran over to Makino to hide behind her. "No," he cried, hiding from Garp. "He's gonna kill me. I done wanna die." "Luffy, get back here," Garp yelled, cracking his knuckles together, a sadistic grin on his face. "Poor kid," Zoro said, unusually sympathetic as Garp came closer to them. Makino then held up her hands and cried out, "Garp-san, didn't you say that you had to go somewhere today? Apparently, Marine Headquarters need you back for a very important job." "I do, but Luffy spent all day running from his training," Garp barked. "It's lucky we got any training down at all this week. What did you make him do this time?" Makino asked as Luffy didn't dare come out from behind her. "He left me down a giant hole for 2 days, Luffy whispered to her. 2 days? Chopper screamed out. "Poor guy," Frankie sighed as he looked at Luffy's bleeding hands and scratches on his face. "How could anyone do that?" Nami demanded hotly. "I understand training, but there's a limit. If I didn't know better, I'd swear that he's trying to kill him." "So how have things been here?" Garp asked in a casual manner, now addressing Makino. "Quiet and peaceful as always," she smiled, "through I can't help but think that's because your ship is docked at the harbor." "I'll be returning to HQ tonight," he said as Makino looked up. "So I'll be leaving this troublemaker with you again." "So, he's just leaving his grandson with some random person?" Nami asked, looking at Makino. "Who is this lady?" She looked a little too young to be Luffy's mother. Makino smiled at him and nodded. "That's great. You know how much I love having Luffy visit." She then smiled at the little boy and ran her fingers through his hair fondly before she asked, "Do you know when you'll be back?" "I guess she isn't his mother," Robin said lightly. "How could Luffy come from such a kind and beautiful woman anyway?" Sanji asked at once. "Yo-ho-ho, Makino-san is so nice." Brook laughed happily. "Don't know yet," Garp answered, finishing up his bag of rice crackers. "But don't worry. This village is so small no real pirate will stop by here again. The last ones who were dumb enough to come by were complete weaklings." "Biwahahaha. Well, please hurry back anyway," Makino said happily, though her expression clearly stated otherwise. "Oh, and please let us know beforehand so that we can gather enough crackers to cover your next stay," she added as Garp tilted his head back to finish the bag. "I gotta say, anyone who can stand up to Garp like that has nerves of steel," Zoro said, his eyebrows raised impressed. "And she seems willing to put up with Luffy, so that only adds to it." Robin smiled and laughed slightly. Well, he was cute. Garp just laughed even harder as he waved goodbye. The sun had all but fallen on the horizon and the bright orange of the sunset had given way to the deep purples and blues of night. "So, he's just leaving him?" Nami asked sardonically. "With no money or clothes or anything. I'd just be happy with him gone," Usopp whispered as Makino took Luffy upstairs so that she could clean him up. "He's getting pretty harsh with his training, isn't he?" Makino asked in a kind voice, looking sadly at his bleeding hands. "But it looks like you'll be staying with me again tonight, huh?" "I really like her," Chopper said at once as Luffy smiled at her. "She seems really nice." "Oh, Look at you, she said, rubbing some of the dirt off his cheek, you're a mess. Well, I was thinking about taking a bath anyway, why don't you take one with me? What? Sanji cried out, hearts in his eyes. Oh, I'm all for it. Thank you Luffy for remembering this. You aren't going to watch. Nami yelled, punching him hard. Nami swwwwaannn, he croaked out as he hit the ground with a bloody nose. Though it was hard to tell if it was from the punch or his own thoughts. Yo-ho-ho-ho, I wonder what color panties she has, Brook asked as he went off to follow closely behind, only to have Nami also ended up knocking him out. She didn't know who this woman was, but she at least deserved some privacy. Later. Come on, Nami. Usopp begged as they followed Makino and Luffy to a small living area above the bar, which was obvious where Makino lived. They watched as she had gathered up some clothes and a first aid kit before leading Luffy to a small bathhouse back downstairs. It's just a memory. It's not like we're spying on them for real. I don't care, she snapped, standing in front of the doorway with an angry look at them. Sanji, Usopp, Brook, and Frankie were all there, trying to figure out some way to get past Nami as Zoro and Chopper stood back, clearly not interested in looking. No one in going in. Nami yelled at them, and anyone who tries deals with me. Robin giggled as she used her powers out of curiosity to listen to what was going on in there. Makino. Luffy's voice asked as the sound of water splashed. Why does Grandpa want me to be a marine so badly? That is a good question, she heard Makino answer. Well, he wants you to be able to help people and to protect them from pirates. But I wanna be a pirate, Luffy said as a scrubbing sound came next. Does that make me bad? No, she laughed good-naturedly. I don't think you can be bad if you tried, Luffy. But there are some really bad pirates in the world, so that's why we have the Marines do their best to protect us from them. But I'm sure there are still some good pirates in the world. I wanna be a good pirate. Luffy exclaimed, splashing some water and laughing. I wanna go on adventures and see the world. Makino, do you think I can? Huh, Makino giggled as she responded, yes, I'm sure you will someday. But I think it would be best not to tell Garp-san that. I'm going to be a pirate even if Grandpa says no. Luffy declared, the loudest splash yet came and Makino laughed as the water went everywhere. I know, she giggled at him. You're not the type of person who gives up their dreams easily. I'm sure that you'll be out there on the sea someday. But if you did, what would you do? I'd, Luffy's voice trailed off as he thought that over. I don't know yet. I know I want to be a pirate but. Robin could tell that Makino was smiling as she heard her getting out of the water. It's okay, you don't need to decide what you want yet. You've got a long time to figure that out before you leave. But until you do, this'll be our secret, okay? Robin giggled again as some of the boys fought with Nami, trying to get a peek inside, but soon, Makino and Luffy came back out, both of them dressed in Luffy's case, bandaged up. Luffy was already yawning tiredly as Makino led him to a small room in the house where a bed was already made up. She lay him down on the bed and in a motherly way, she ran her hand through his hair before finally closed the curtains just as the moon was coming up. She closed the door quietly behind her and they heard her go back downstairs to attend to her bar again. That's so sweet, Nami sighed. She's just like a mother to him. But who is she? Frankie asked. Did Luffy ever mention her to you guys? Now that you mention it, Luffy doesn't talk much about his past now does he? Zoro asked as Luffy's eyes began to close. None of us do, Robin spoke up, and they all looked at each other. Yeah, none of them like to mention their pasts, even to each other. They prefer to just live through each day having fun and enjoying each other's company. They all knew enough about each other that they didn't need to know about their pasts. But now, they just witness a small part of Luffy's childhood. His grandfather's idea of training would kill a normal person, while a woman with a kind heart took care of him afterwards. What's happening now? Brook asked as everything slowly faded away around them. I think Luffy's falling asleep, Sanji said, his heart still broken to the idea of never being able to see Makino bathing. Really, what good were memories when you couldn't see anything worth seeing? But before the room completely disappeared around them, they could just make out a voice shouting out through the night, pirates. A pirate ship is docking. Chapter 4, Promise Between Men. The Passing of the Hat. When the darkness faded once again, they were back in the same bedroom where Luffy had fallen asleep in, only this time there was bright light shining through the thin curtains, and the little boy was just waking up. He was sitting up in bed, and rubbing his sleepy eyes. He really is cute, isn't he? Robin asked with a smile as she watched the boy tumble from the bed in a mess of blankets before blinking a little and standing up. I wish we knew just what was going on here, Nami whispered as she watched him. How is this possible? How is it that we're able to see into Luffy's memories? Just what is going on? We've all been asking ourselves that same question, Nami-san, Brook whispered as he watched Luffy going to the window and standing on his tiptoes to look outside. But it seems that it is a mystery inside a problem. Yeah, we came here to find the present-day Luffy and go back. Usopp called out, which is what we should be doing. Luffy's spent enough time down here as it is. And I don't know about you, but I don't think that he'd be too happy if he knew that we were watching his. But before he could finish his train of thought, Luffy let out a little gasp as he turned and went running to the door, calling for Makino. What's wrong? Usopp asked worriedly. Don't know, Robin answered as she watched him tug the door open and run downstairs with a big smile on his face. But it doesn't seem like there's a problem. Zoro went to the window to see for himself. At first, he couldn't really see anything that would make Luffy so excited. The village looked the same as it did in the last memory, only now it was early morning instead of twilight. But as he squinted his eye, he could make out something that hadn't been there the night before. At the docks, silhouetted against the bright sun, was a new ship sitting at port. There was a ship with a black flag and skull. Smiling, now understanding what this was about, he told them all to follow him and they did to find the little boy now bursting into the bar downstairs. Makino! Luffy cried out happily. Did you see it? There's a pirate ship at port. But as they all followed him inside, they could see that it wasn't just Makino who was there. The whole bar was filled with men, all slumped over in their seats, most of them were passed out drunk. As for Makino, she was standing at the bar, cleaning some glasses before she looked up at Luffy and smiled brightly at him. Are they all pirates? Chopper asked as he looked over them all. Looks like they drunk themselves into some pretty bad hangovers, Sanji smirked as he overlooked them all. I hate to be them when they wake up, Zoro muttered to himself. Yes, Luffy I know, Makino said, still beaming happily, though her smile seemed to be a little forced as she gave the men a nervous sideways glance. They got here last night after you went to bed. They've been here all night drinking. I'm surprised that you were able to sleep through all of it. She leaned over and patted his raven hair with an affectionate smile as Luffy looked at them all curiously. Oh, I didn't think it would be possible, but she's even more beautiful in the light. Sanji sighed, hearts back in his eyes as he looked at Makino. So beautiful. Cool it lover boy, Nami sighed in annoyance. Something tells me you aren't her type. Who's the kid? Asked a slightly slurred voice suddenly, he your little brother. Looking over Makino's shoulder, the Straw Hat saw that the only man at the bar was just raising his head from where he was sleeping a second ago. He had an easy-going smile and his face was bright red from all the sake he drank. The most noticeable features about him though were the 3 scars across his left eye as well as his bright red hair. And on his head was something very familiar to them all.
Yo, quick pause, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new here, share this video, and tell me in the comments which part you're loving the most.
Hey, that's Luffy's hat, Chopper said, pointing to him in surprise. Yes, Zoro said lightly, looking at the man with new interest. Luffy did say that he got that hat from a pirate. Red hair Shanks, Robin said softly. This is the first time I've ever seen him. Makino smiled at him. Sadly no, she answered. But I look after him when his grandfather's not here. Where'd you come from, old man? Luffy asked him curiously, and at that, the men who weren't passed out suddenly started laughing. But they weren't the only ones, for the Straw Hats burst out laughing as well at the look on Shanks' face. As honest as ever I see, Robin laughed. I see that his manners haven't changed a bit since he was a kid. Sanji also laughed as Brook held onto his middle at that. It hurts. Brook laughed. My gut feels like it's gonna burst from laughing. Not that I have a gut to burst. Yo ho ho ho. Old man, Shanks snapped at him. I'm not even in my 30s yet, you brat. Compared to him you are old, Captain. A fat pirate commented, enjoying a slab of meat on a dagger before falling over from his seat as he started laughing too. Who asked you? Shanks demanded. Makino led Luffy to the other side of the bar and set him up on the stool. Now, Luffy, don't anger the customers. Zoro wasn't sure if he was the only one who noticed the slight nervousness in Makino's tone through all the laughing. Apparently, he wasn't. It's all right, Makino, Shanks sighed, waving his hand at his tipsy crew. Believe me, it doesn't take much to get these losers laughing. Who the hell are you? Luffy asked, looking at him. He has a short attention span, Nami sighed, shaking her head. Where did all this people come from? Luffy asked Makino with bright interest. Shanks went back to his food. The name's Shanks. I'm a pirate. Luffy's eyes lit up with stars as he yelled out in excitement, did you say you were a pirate? As in you guys aren't Marines. Luffy quickly crossed the room to his side. Does that mean you go on adventures? Tell me. The little guy has a death wish. Zoro laughed at Shanks' surprised look, as if he expected the kid to go and hide at the mention of pirates. If Shanks was like most pirates, he probably would have killed him a long time ago. Yes, and I think that all this is really interesting, but we really need to start getting out of here, Nami said as the image disappeared again. Not like we have much choice, Zoro shrugged. The next memory came back, and they were still in the bar. This time though, the pirates didn't seem to be as drunk as they had been before. The tavern scene was a lively one. A pirate crew was partying and laughing, drinking and eating and cracking jokes with each other. Wish I could have some of that, Zoro sighed, looking at all the bottles of sake that were being passed around. Well, too bad, Usopp said to him, slapping his chest irritably. If this is a memory then we won't be having any more luck than with Garp walking through us. Yes, Brooke sighed. It was so terrifying that I thought my heart had stopped. Ah, not that I have one. Oh, look, Frankie said, pointing, and they saw that Luffy was still sitting at the same stool he had been before, only now he looked a little older and was now wearing a bandage on his cheek. Looks like some time had passed since we last saw them, Robin reasoned. Yeah, Luffy did mention that Shanks visited his hometown for about a year, Usopp said, thinking back to the day that he and Luffy first met. So this had to been some time before that. So let me see if I got this straight, Shanks said to Luffy, sitting exactly where he had been before. You wanna be a pirate because your gramps said not to. I don't wanna be a marine. Luffy said loudly. It doesn't look or sound like it'd be any fun at all. Training all day, following rules, you can't go anywhere without permission. That's why I think it'd be a lot more fun being a pirate. Yeah, that makes sense, Frankie laughed. Who'd want to work for the government anyway? It'd take all the fun out of life. Well, I guess I can't argue with any of that, Shanks said, thinking that over. Yeah, it's great being a pirate, I mean sure, it'd be better without the bounty hunters and marines on our tails all the time, but job hazard I suppose. Why'd you become a pirate? Luffy asked him. Shanks said, thinking it all over. Don't know anymore, he finally confessed. I guess I just wanted to go out and have as much fun as possible. Like you said, I knew that it'd be freer than locking yourself up in Marine headquarters for most of your life. I mean, when was the last time you heard about Marines going out for adventures? Marines, they're given an order, and they do it no matter what. The best thing about being a pirate is that you can do whatever you want, whenever you want. Yep, I can see right away that this guy is a big influence on Luffy, Sanji smiled. Almost like seeing an older version of the rubber brain. Luffy's eyes lit up at that. Then, take me with you on your next adventure, Shanks. Luffy said at once. I want to be a pirate, too. Shanks laughed out loud. How can a boy like you become a pirate? He asked him in a teasing way. Why not? Luffy demanded hotly. Luffy, said a voice next to them, and they looked in time to see a man leaning back in his chair with his feet up on the table. Usopp gulped down a gasp, staring at him as he felt cold sweat on his face. The man's skin was tanned and sea-worn as his sandy blonde hair fell over his face, but he was looking directly to the blue bandana he was wearing, and the name written on it, Usopp. Dad, he whispered softly. Dad, Chopper asked in amazement. You mean that's your dad? You never mentioned that your dad's a pirate. Oh, right, I remember when we first met. Luffy said something about meeting your old man, Zoro said thinking back. Usopp sniffed a little, finally getting a good look at his father. I can definitely see a family resemblance, Frankie smiled. Usopp grinned proudly as he exclaimed to them all loudly, that's right. It only makes sense. After all, this brave warrior of the seas had to get his talent from somewhere. That's for sure, Nami whispered to herself, rolling her eyes. That's awesome, Usopp. Chopper cried, stars in his eyes. It must be nice for you to get a good look at your father, Brooke said softly, though it was hard to tell without skin, but he appeared to have been smiling. Listen, Usopp said, pointing at Luffy. It's not about how well you can or can't swim. A pirate is a lot more than that. But I can fight, Luffy said, punching the air in front of him. My punch is as strong as pistols. Are you kidding? Usopp asked, sweat dropped. They're now stronger than cannons. A pistol. Wow, really? Shanks asked, going back to his plate of food in front of him, and the other pirates started laughing at him. Would you stop laughing at me? Luffy shouted at them, and the Straw Hats couldn't help but laugh along as well. You're still just a kid, a man, Lucky Roo said with a cheerful smile, enjoying a piece of meat. You're about the same age as my kid, Usopp added, and Usopp couldn't stop the proud smile on his face. I'm not a kid, Luffy shouted out, gritting his teeth together as he glared at them all. I'm a grown-up. Relax, it's nothing to be mad about. Here, have some juice, Shanks said, putting a small glass in front of him. As always, when face to face with food, Luffy's anger disappeared like magic. Oh, thanks, he said, taking a sip before Shanks started laughing so hard that he was pounding the bar with his hand. What's so funny now? Nami asked. She got her answer at once when Shanks roared out laughing, see? You're a kid. What kind of pirate likes juice? But I like juice, Chopper said in confusion. Shanks is just teasing him, Chopper, Sanji laughed. I like this guy already. They seem like very good people, Brooke added. Like they have a lot of fun no matter where they go. That's a dirty trick, Luffy shouted at him angrily. As everyone else started laughing, he snapped at them all, stop laughing at me. It doesn't seem like it took much to get Luffy angry. Frankie laughed so hard that tears were in his eyes. Yes, he seemed to have had quite the short temper, Robin laughed. These days, it takes a lot more to make him mad. However, at the same time, he still acts like this little kid right here. Yeah, Nami laughed, which just proves that he's an immature kid like I always thought. I prefer to think of it as being young at heart, Robin smiled. Luffy, how about you calm down and eat? Makino's voice asked as she came out from the back, carrying another bottle of sake and put it in front of Shanks before beaming at Luffy. How about it? She asked. Oh, he's so lucky to be waited on such a kind-hearted woman. Sanji croaked out, falling to his knees as he looked at Makino. Oh, love, the likes of which I've never seen before, she's enchanted my like a spell, as we speak I'm falling deeper and deeper into her eyes. Would you shut up you idiot? Zoro grumbled. Are you ready to die yet you shitty swordsman? Sanji cried, jumping to his feet, fire starting to burn on his leg at once. You really think you can take me on? Zoro shot back, his hands going for his swords again. Would you boys knock it off? Nami yelled at them in frustration. God, I can't hear myself think with you two around. Nami Swan, Sanji began, swooning back at her, but she told him to shut up as Luffy was telling Makino that he'd pay her back with his treasure tab. Treasure tab? Chopper repeated, you could almost see the question marks floating above his head. What's that? I think he means that he'll pay her back later when he gets some treasure, Sanji said, having recovered from his newly broken heart. The poor woman, Nami sighed with a smile. Letting him eat at her bar without paying. Makino-san's generosity knows no bounds. Brook cried out happily. But how's he gonna pay her back with treasure when he doesn't have any? Usopp asked, his eyebrows raised. What treasure? Shanks asked, obviously thinking the same thing. You shouldn't lie you know. Oh, I don't think he is, Frankie laughed. Luffy can't lie to save his life. That's for sure, Nami agreed as they all nodded. I am not, Luffy said determinedly, before looking back to her and saying firmly, I'm definitely going to be a pirate someday. And when I come across a lot of treasure, I'll come back and pay you with that. Makino smiled and laughed. I look forward to it. I really like her, Chopper said at once as Luffy smiled at her. I hope we get to meet her for real someday. Nami laughed, I can tell she's got the patience of a saint. Hey, Shanks, Luffy said, his mouth full of food and Sanji sighed, muttering to himself, I see that his manners haven't changed much. Shanks asked him as he enjoyed his drink. How long are you going to stay this time? Well, Shanks said, thinking it all over for a moment, it's been a nice here. But we decided that we'll probably set sail a couple more times and then we'll leave this town for good and head back north. Only a few more times, Luffy said softly, taking a long time to swallow as he glanced down at his food. Makino gave him a sad smile and sighed from where she was cleaning glasses behind the counter. Am I missing something here? Usopp asked them. It's obvious that Luffy doesn't want them to leave, Usopp, Nami pointed out. He's sad because he'll be forced to say goodbye to them all for good. But just then, Luffy looked up and said to Shanks, I'll be a great swimmer by then. At that, Shanks started to laugh again. Sure, we'll see about that. In other words, no, Frankie said knowingly. Just then, the door to the tavern was literally kicked in and a group of men came inside. There were a large number of them, all of them dressed mostly alike with smug smiles on their suspicious-looking faces. As if they were plotting something. Who are these losers? Zoro asked darkly. Look like bandits to me, Sanji claimed, remembering seeing bandits sometimes back when he was still a chief at the Bharati. The pirates fell silent, looking up, as if curious to see what these men were going to do. Sorry for the interruption, the man in the front said, obviously the leader of the group, before marching in. Luffy looked up at him in confusion as Makino stopped cleaning the glass and seemed to become tense, as if expecting a fight to break out. So these are the pirates I've heard so much about, the man said, stepping on the door and leaving a boot-shaped print in it. They all look like idiots to me. Doesn't he have any idea who he's talking to? Nami asked incredulously. Shanks is one of the 4 emperors after all. Well, it is possible that Shanks might not have become an emperor just yet, Robin said reasonably. This happened over 10 years ago after all. Either way, Zoro said with a rather evil smirk. But it looks like we're heading to a good show if we're lucky. How would we be lucky to watch people get killed? Nami snapped at him. The pirate crew didn't say anything as they kept a close watch on the bandits, still waiting to see what they would do. The group approached the bar, with Luffy watching as Makino walked forward to greet them. Welcome, what can I do for you? She asked. There was a hint of uneasiness in her tone, but she stood in front of him with a forced smile. We're bandits, the man smirked at her. Really? Usopp asked sarcastically. We hadn't noticed. We're not here to destroy your bar. We just need about 10 barrels of sake. That's no way to address a lady, Sanji snarled, hating anyone who threatened a woman. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that we're all out of sake at the moment, Makino answered him politely. The bandit asked, his eyebrows raised. That's strange. These pirates seem to be enjoying themselves here. What are they drinking then? Water. Those jerks, Sanji warned. They better not do anything to her just because they don't have any drink for them. It's sake, Makino answered him, but it's also the last of our stock. I have to say she's kinda growing on me too, Zoro smirked. She's got a lot of guts. Shanks looked up at them. Oh sorry, he said to them all, looks like we went and drank the place dry. But if you want, there is still a bottle left that's unopened. Shanks then held up the bottle that Makino had just brought him. If you want it, it's all yours. The bandit's eyes suddenly darkened, as if he couldn't believe that Shanks would dare speak in front of him before he shattered the bottle, the drink splashing all over Shanks in the bar. Makino and Luffy gasped while the bandits all laughed at the sight of it, though the pirates didn't seem fazed by it at all as they turned to their captain, whose head was down with the hat shading his eyes so they couldn't see his face. "What's with him?" Nami yelled out furiously. "I know that his crew drank all the sake, but that's no reason to act like a jerk." "What a waste of perfectly good sake," Zoro sighed tragically. "Do you even know who you're talking to?" The bandit said coldly. "I am a bandit. I'm a wanted man who's worth 8 million belly." "Big deal," Sanji said, puffing a little on his cigarette. "We could take you out without breaking a sweat." The bandit went on, "One bottle won't be nearly enough. Don't take me lightly." It was quiet for a brief moment before Shanks looked up. "Now the floor's all wet." "Sorry about that, Makino. Is it just me, or does that sound like something Luffy would have said?" Frankie asked, tilting his head. Robin giggled. "It's not just you, Frankie. I guess now we know where Luffy learned that from." Shanks then knelt down and started picking up the shards of glass and asked, "Do you have a mop?" Though I doubt that Luffy would offer to help clean up, Nami added as Makino shook herself awake and went around from behind the bar. Oh, no, it's fine, Captain," she said at once, "I can manage it." But as she stepped out, the mountain bandit drew his sword and slashed it along the bar, cutting a groove into the wood and sending everything on it crashing to the floor to make an even bigger mess. "Well, if you enjoying cleaning," he sneered at Shanks, who was now leaned up against the bar, now soaked with sake. "Now there's more to clean." He put the sword back and said, "No point wasting our time here while there's no sake. Let's go, men." He then called to his men, and with that, the band of bandits turned and filed out of the tavern, all of them roaring with laughter. "Later, cowards," the leader called over his shoulder with a sneer as he left. The Straw Hats were now looking over at Luffy, who was shaking in his seat, but not from fear, rather with anger. The only sound left was coming from the remaining door swinging squeakily from its hinges. Makino quickly kneeled down next to Shanks. "Are you alright?" she asked worriedly, using the towel in her hand to help clean him up. "Are you hurt anywhere, Captain?" Shanks merely waved his hand at her. "I'm fine, it's no problem," he reassured her before he grinned. And as if he broke a curse, his crew broke out into loud, energetic laughter at their captain, with Shanks laughing louder than any of them. "They really got you," Yasop yelled, laughing. "That's funny. You look pretty dumb on the floor there, Captain." Lucky Roo laughed as well as Shanks kept laughing loud with Makino still there trying to clean him up. "Man, it's like I'm looking at Luffy here," Zoro chuckled. "I know," Nami said, shaking her head. "Looks like Shanks was more of a role model to him instead of just a friend." "But Luffy doesn't look too happy," Chopper pointed out, seeing Luffy jump up onto his seat, looking furious at them all with his fists clenched tightly at his sides. "Why are you laughing?" Luffy then yelled and caused everyone to look over at him. "That wasn't cool," he went on angrily. "Why didn't you fight back? No matter how many there are or how strong they look, if you don't fight back then you're not a man." "Now I see I was wrong about you guys." "Really?" Chopper asked worriedly. "Nah," Zoro smiled, waving his hand down at him. "It's one of the first rules you gotta learn out here. Sometimes there are fights that aren't worth getting angry over." He looked over to Nami as he said that, remembering the bar fight they had in Jaya over 2 years ago, and how angry she had been at them for refusing to fight. But this time, he could see that she was frowning slightly, as if thinking about what he just said. "I know how you feel, Luffy," Shanks said calmly, looking up at him from the floor, "but all he did was spill sake on me. It's not worth getting upset over." "I know that we've never met this man," Brooks said, looking at him with new respect, "but I already like him. He's a man among men," Frankie said proudly, his eyes watering a little at how strong-willed the captain of the red-haired pirates was. "Whatever," Luffy huffed at him as he looked over to the chest sitting next to him and then reached in to grab something. The Straw Hats leaned over to see what it was he had taken and saw an unusual fruit in his hands. "Yow," Frankie asked in surprise. "What's that?" "It's the funniest looking fruit I've ever seen." "That's because it's a devil's fruit," Robin informed him with a smile. "Really?" Nami asked curiously. "I've never seen one." "Is it?" Usopp said, but before he could finish speaking, Luffy took a big bite of it. "So that's what happened," Nami said, smacking her forehead. "Idiot has no idea what it is." "Very few people do," Robin smiled sadly, thinking back to when she had accidentally eaten her devil fruit years ago. When she had gone to visit the archaeologists at the Tree of Knowledge, they had been studying the devil's fruit. She hadn't eaten anything at all the night before because her aunt had sent her to bed without food, and in the morning she had run off before her aunt would force her to do even more chores. When she saw the fruit there on the table, she grabbed it without thinking. "Yeah," Chopper agreed with a nod. "I didn't know the fruit I ate would do this to me." "Well, you were still a baby reindeer at the time, right?" Usopp pointed out in a teasing voice. "Shut up," Chopper yelled, his face a little red when Nami gave a little, AW wink, sound. Shanks had wiped off the straw hat before he put it back on and looked up at Luffy. "You shouldn't eat out of frustration, you know." "Shut up," Luffy said through a mouthful of fruit. Shanks blinked before they widened in panic, realizing that something was wrong. "Wait, what are you eating?" he shouted just as Luffy finished swallowing. "Too late now," Robin giggled. Luffy, Shanks yelled, getting up and staring at him in horror. Don't tell me you just ate the fruit that was inside that chest. Luffy just looked at him in confusion, not understanding why he seemed so upset. Instead of answering, Shanks grabbed him and turned him upside down, shaking him. Spit it out. Spit out every piece. What are you doing? Luffy cried, and that was when his legs stretched out and he literally fell flat on his face. He hung there comically for a few seconds before he bounced right back up. The Straw Hats all started to laugh, having seen this so many times that they were used to it, but seeing the stunned looks on everyone's faces was just priceless. So that's how it happened, Sanji laughed. He never saw what hit him. Yo-ho-ho-ho, Brook laughed sympathetically. Poor Luffy-san, though it's a good thing that he did eat it if you think about it, Nami beamed. After all, it's because of that annoying ability that he's still alive after everything that's happened to us over the last 2 years. Does this mean? One of the pirates gasped out. He couldn't have. Yasop gasped. Luffy was staring ahead of him, his face slightly red from where it hit the floor. But his eyes were wide in shock as he asked, what just happened? Shanks lifted him up so that they were eye to eye and he shouted out, Luffy, that was a devil fruit. The devil fruits are the treasures of the sea. If you eat it you lose the ability to swim for the rest of your life, but the one you ate also turns your body to rubber. The pirates started panicking and Luffy stared, freaking out. What? No, it can't. You're an idiot, Shanks yelled. Nami shook her head fondly. He is, isn't he? She asked. But then, what does that make Shanks for leaving something like that lying around? Suddenly the image faded and they were back in the darkness and Frankie asked, so did all of you eat your devil fruits by accident? I did, Robin answered. I think it was just before I turned 8 did I eat mine. The archaeologists on my home island were studying it. And you ate it like that? Nami asked in surprise. Well, I'd never seen a devil fruit before, so I had no idea what it was until it was too late, Robin answered with a smile. But it has been useful, of course. Yeah, Chopper agreed, jumping up so that he was on Zoro's shoulder. I remember when I ate mine. He was still that blue-nosed little reindeer who had been forced to walk behind the rest of his herd. His herd rejected him because of his nose. Whenever they ate, he was forced to stay behind and wait until they finished grazing on whatever plant they could find. On this particular day, his stomach was so hungry that he was in pain. He was starting to straggle behind the rest of the herd until he spotted the strange-looking fruit. It wasn't like anything he had ever seen before and couldn't help but stare at it as it lay, half buried, in the snow. He remembered putting his nose to it to sniff it, but couldn't smell anything. He turned it over with his blue nose and his stomach was now crying with hunger. Unable to help himself, he had devoured all of it, crying at the exertion of swallowing each unpalatable mouthful all the while. After that, Chopper said, I slowly started transforming. What about you, Brook? Usopp asked. Did you eat yours by accident too? No, Brook admitted. I remember that day as if it happened yesterday. Not long after I joined the Rumbar Pirates, we got into a fierce battle with some marines that had been chasing us back in the West Blue. The devil fruit came bobbing up from all the wreckage. So you knew what it was beforehand? Zoro asked. At first, we couldn't decide if one of us eat it, or if we should sell it, Brook went on. It was a problem, none of us had ever seen one before and we didn't have the slightest clue to what it could do. But it was decided that I would decide. Why you? Sanji asked. Yo-ho-ho-ho, because I was the one who fished it out of the sea. He laughed. It was a rule on our ship. Whatever we find, we decide what to do with it. In the end, I couldn't help myself and ate it. And what did you do when nothing happened? Frankie asked. I thought that it was just a fake at first, Brook confessed. I didn't feel any different, nor did I suddenly have any powers. But I learned the hard way that it was the real thing when I next went for a swim. I almost drowned. Yo-ho-ho. And you figured out what kind it was later? Usopp asked. Merely a guess, Brook answered. It wasn't until I died and came back as all bones Brook did I know for sure. Well, it's good, Robin smiled. Otherwise we never would have met you. Yo-ho-ho. Your words are so kind, Robin-san. Brook laughed. He was about to ask if he could see her panties, but before he could, the scene changed. And just like that, the scene changed. They were still in the village just a little ways away from the bar, they could see it just up the road. Luffy was there, skipping along as a few people looked over at him. Hey rubber boy, a fishmonger said as he passed by them. Why are you in such a good mood lately? The pirates set sail without you, you know. He then smirked and added, won't be much of a pirate if you can't even swim. Luffy just laughed and waved cheerfully at him. It doesn't matter if I can't swim, he said happily. If I sink like an anchor, then I'll just become a pirate that doesn't fall overboard. Who does he think he's kidding? Usopp asked, remembering all the times that Luffy needed to be rescued from drowning. If he even takes a bath it's hard for him. I'm glad I ate the gum-gum fruit, he said, grabbing his face and pulling it so that it stretched out, causing all the villagers to all stare. Look what I can do. At that moment, a middle-aged man approached them. This man had a cleft chin, grayish-white mustache and beard, and was wearing oval glasses. He was also leaning on a walking stick as he approached Luffy. Who's this guy? Zoro asked unimpressed. You think being stared at because you're a freak is a great thing, he demanded from Luffy. Well, this village doesn't need any more idiots, Sunny. Robin's eyes darkened at that, remembering how the other children had been scared of her after she ate the devil's fruit and ran away from her like a monster. Next to her, she could hear Chopper sniffling a little, and knew that he could understand what it was like. A freak, Nami repeated angrily. That's a terrible thing to say to someone. Oh, Luffy said happily with a little wave. Good morning, Mayor. Luffy-san doesn't seem to mind, Brook answered happily. Of course not, Zoro answered. He's proud of that, so he's the major. Robin repeated a little surprised. He looks really grumpy, Chopper stated, not sure if he liked the man. I suppose you would too if you had to put up with Luffy, Sanji pointed out. For the last time, Luffy, I won't allow you to become a pirate. The major declared. It'd make the village look bad. Now the captain's not such a bad fellow, but you stay away from those pirates. Guess he didn't listen, Robin said with a smile. I think that's a safe guess, Nami laughed. Luffy just stuck his fingers in his ears as if he couldn't hear him and went charging on ahead like nothing happened. The scene changed again suddenly, and the next thing they knew was that they were back in the tavern with Luffy and Makino. It was quite a different place when it was just the two of them there and no laughing pirates drinking and poking fun at Luffy. As for Luffy, he was sitting at the bar with a glass of juice in front of him while Makino was cleaning up some of the glasses behind the bar. Almost don't recognize it when it's empty, Frankie said, looking around. Yeah, tell me about it, Usopp asked, looking around, hoping for another glimpse of his father. It's a little creepy to be honest. I wonder where everyone is. You need to start paying attention, Robin answered him. Shanks told Luffy that they would visit only a few more times before they left for good. Oh, right, Usopp answered, hitting his hand with a fist. Luffy did say that he hadn't seen Shanks since he was a little kid. Luffy doesn't look happy about it, Chopper said as he watched Luffy play around with the glass in a bored way, his face looking slightly grim. The captain's been away for a while now, Makino said, breaking the silence. You miss them, don't you, Luffy? Not a bit, he said stubbornly. I still haven't forgiven them for that thing with the bandits yet. He finished his drink before he leaned over the bar, the glass still in his teeth as he went on. I overestimated Shanks and the others. I thought they were the coolest pirates. What a letdown. Really? Makino asked him with a knowing smile. I think being able to laugh after what happened is much cooler. Makino, you just don't get it, Luffy said persistently. There are times where a man must fight. I agree with that, Zoro grinned. But there are also times to know when to back down. Really? Makino asked with a bright smile. I do not understand these things. Ah, Luffy-san is so lucky to have known such a kind and beautiful woman looking after him, Brook said. I'm jealous. She truly has a heart of gold, Sanji sighed longingly. I must come and visit her one of these days. Makino tilted her head to the side and smiled kindly. I'm sure they'll be back soon. Yes, I agree, Robin said with a sad smile as she watched the two. It must be nice to have someone who cares for you so much. Chopper asked. What are you talking about, Robin? Just saying that I wish I had someone who cared about me like she seems to with him, she said, watching Makino put away the glasses and ask Luffy if he wanted something to eat. I mean, she acts almost like a mother or an older sister to him. She's like family in a way. Luffy's family. You mean like his grandpa or Ace? Chopper then asked, before realizing what he said and clamped his hooves over his mouth as if he said something bad. They all looked to each other, all of them thinking the same thing. Not one of them had ever once mentioned Ace. They had been so glad to see each other after 2 long years of training that they never had time to talk about anything that happened during the Whitebeard War. Luffy had only mentioned Ace once since then. That was when he had been talking to Kami about wanting to see Jinbei when they visited Fishman Island. Speaking of Ace, Usopp said slowly and carefully, where is he? Sanji breathed smoke from his cigarette as he answered, I think that's a simple answer. It could just be that they haven't met yet. After all, Ace was adopted by Luffy's grandfather, right? So will we see Ace again? Chopper asked with his voice muffled through his hooves. If we're really seeing Luffy's memories, then there's a good chance, Robin said, her thumb underneath her chin as she thought that over. But that's the whole problem. What do you mean? Chopper asked, lowering his hooves and looking at her in confusion. The problem is that we're watching these private memories, Zoro said darkly, and that shut them all up when they realized what they were doing. Yow, Frankie said at once anxiously. Does that mean that Luffy doesn't know that we're watching? I honestly don't know, Robin answered as she continued to watch Luffy and Makino talk to each other. But if these truly are his memories, which I'm sure they are, then there is a good chance that we're watching them without the captain's knowledge or permission. Usopp called out in panic. Quick, turn it all off then. I wouldn't want it if someone was looking into my head without me knowing. Yes, we need to leave, Chopper called out hurriedly. I would if I could, Robin answered him. But I don't know how this is even happening right now. Nami frowned at her and asked, but what are we supposed to do? We're stuck here watching his life story. I don't know, Robin answered again sadly. I only know what I told you. Whether or not he knows that we're watching is the question. But until we can figure out a way out of here, then we will watch. Oi, Usopp said to her, waving his arms around. That's not fair. If Luffy's at the gates of hell, then he deserves to keep his memories private if he wants them private, doesn't he? Would you all leave her alone? Sanji snapped at Usopp. If Robin-chan doesn't know how to get out of here, then no one does. They all looked at each other, knowing how touché they all were when it came to their pasts. All of them had their secrets. And Luffy had never pressed them to talk about things they rather not. However, they were now literally watching Luffy's history. Zoro gave a frustrated sigh and frowned. There isn't really much we can do about it, he said, we don't really have a choice in the matter. Nami bit her lip. But Zoro, she began. I don't like this. None of us do, he said, folding his arms and shutting his eye. But what else can we do? What? You suddenly know how to get out of this place? Well, no but, she stammered. Until you do figure it out, we're stuck here, Zoro stated finally. But, Chopper began. Chopper, Sanji said, folding his legs under him so he could sit down on the floor, surprisingly on Zoro's side for once. We all feel the same way. But until we find a way out of here, we're stuck watching it. So the sooner we get out, the sooner that we can leave Luffy's past his business. But who knows what we could end up seeing? Nami cried out. It's not fair to him. I mean, what if we see something that he doesn't want us to see? Chopper shifted on his feet in an upset way. What do we tell Luffy when we find him? Maybe it's better if we don't mention it, Usopp said to himself. No, we will, Zoro said without room for an argument. We don't have his permission to be seeing any of this. If it were me, I'd be angry as hell. Hard to say what Luffy will do when he finds out, but how can we expect him to trust us if we can't even tell him the truth? They all fell silent for a moment. As much as it pains me to admit it, Sanji stated gloomily, his eyes still on Makino. Moss Head here is right. Until we get out of here and find Luffy, we'll watch this. And when we do find him, we'll be honest. No matter what we see, it won't change the fact that he's our captain. Before anyone could answer, the door to the tavern was kicked open again, putting an end to their conversation. Looking up quickly, they saw that it was the same bandits from before who walked in. They were all looking around, as if expecting to see someone there, all of them smirking horribly as if planning some great big joke. Them again? Frankie asked darkly. Darn, I was hoping to see more with Shanks. He at least had a sense of humor. Yeah, but this can't be good, Nami said softly as the bandits looked around. I see that those pirates aren't around today, the leader said with a satisfied smirk as he walked in, looking almost disappointed. We were passing through and we thought we'd drop in for some sake. They all took the seats and the leader barked at Makino, why are you standing there? We're customers. He slammed his hand onto the table and yelled out, sake. Makino put down the glass at once and cried out, yes, of course. And turned to get them all some at once. Sanji looked furious, now standing in front of the leader and yelled out, oi. That's not how you address a lady. Sanji, they can't hear you. Usopp told him. Sanji was shaking with anger as he yelled out, I know. But I can't stand by and watch a lady being treated like this. This sucks. I can't even kick this bastard. We had a great time that day. One of the bandits said. Did you see the looks on their loser faces? Luffy looked up at them all at once, shaking in anger. They couldn't do a thing, another laughed. Even after you gave their captain a sake bath, boss. What a bunch of cowards. What horrible people. Brook called out angrily. Just because they don't waste their time harassing others doesn't make them cowards. Apparently you aren't the only one who thinks that, Robin said, looking at Luffy. They all glanced and could see the anger cross Luffy's face. They all roared with laughter as their stupid-looking leader said, I really wanted to kill them all. That's what all pirates are after all. Cowards on the seas. At that, Luffy got up and yelled as he jumped up onto his seat, shut up. At those words, everyone in the bar was now looking at him as he kept screaming out, don't mess with Shanks's crew. He's not a coward. Makino's looked terrified as she grabbed him and tried to tell him to be quiet. Luffy, stop it, she cried, but he ignored her as he went on to yell, don't talk about Shanks and the others like they're idiots. What was that, brat? The leader asked him with a scowl. You have a death wish. A lot of people think that, Zoro admitted coolly. Luffy, please, sit down, Makino whispered to him in a pleading way. But Luffy wasn't listening as he glared up at the bandit, I said for you to shut up about Shanks. Why do I have a bad feeling that this isn't going to end well? Nami asked, her hands on her hips. Luffy's hot head is now going to get him into a lot of trouble if he's not careful. Yes, Brook said worriedly. But wasn't Luffy-san upset with Shanks-san too? They're friends, Sanji pointed out. If you're friends, you can insult each other all you like. But if it's some random jerks like that, they deserve to get told off. Yeah, but he's still just a little kid, Usopp pointed out. He's not as strong as he is now. I don't think he's thinking about that, Robin said. When does he ever think? Nami sighed. And like that, the bandit leader reached out and grabbed Luffy by his shirt, and holding him up to his face. Listen, you little brat, you need to learn who you're messing with. Let me go, Luffy yelled, now fighting to get away. Makino rushed forward and grabbed the bandit's other arm. Please, sir, let him go. He didn't mean to. But the bandit wasn't listening as he shoved her away and she hit the bar and stumbled to the ground. Why that piece of shit? Sanji yelled as he took a running leap and tried to kick him, only for his foot to pass through like smoke. Damn it, he cursed out again. How dare he get away for treating a lady like that? If I ever met up with him in the present then I'm gonna kill him. Makino, Luffy cried, now furious as he kicked harder than ever. You can't do something like that to her. You're going to pay for that. Thank you, Sanji cried out, tears in his eyes. Someone agrees with me, she's too beautiful to be treated like this by such scum. Ah, Chopper cried out in panic as they watched the bandits leave the tavern, taking Luffy with them. Now what are they gonna do? What all scum do, Sanji hissed furiously, when they followed them. Continue to be scum. Interesting, the bandit leader said as he watched Luffy's body stretch out. Yeah, looks like punches and kicks are no good. Damn, Luffy yelled as he tried to pull himself free. Say you're sorry. A rubber man, the bandit said looking at him curiously. I never imagined there were such strange creatures in the world. Let me go, Luffy yelled again, as the bandit threw him down to the ground and after a few kicks, placed his boot on his head to keep it down. Even though they knew it wouldn't hurt him, the Straw Hats were quickly growing angrier with each second. Does anyone mind if I kill him? Zoro asked, his hand back on one of his swords. If you can, Frankie said in frustration, aiming his hand at the bandit's head. But we can't even touch the bastard. This is torture, Usopp yelled furiously. We're stuck here watching this and can't do anything about it. A different type of human, the bandit said with an evil grin. He must be worth good money if we sell him. What did he just say? Brook demanded crossly. You heard right, Usopp said, gritting his teeth, his hand going to his slingshot. Damn it, Luffy cursed again as he fought to get the bandit off him. I won't forgive you for this. Why so upset? The lead bandit asked smugly. We were just enjoying a nice drink and you had to come along and ruin it. Yes, you did, Luffy shouted, not able to speak clearly with the boot in his face. Apologize right now. The bandit just laughed at him as he pressed down harder with his foot. He's really starting to tick me off, Zoro growled, his hand twitching on his sword as if aching to draw it. You're not the only one, Brook said, also sounding angry. They're the sort of rotten people I hate. Those who devalue life. I can't stand the smell of them, though I do not have a nose to smell with. Now is not the time, Brook. Usopp yelled. Please, let the child go. The Straw Hats, and everyone else turned to see Makino, hands clasped tightly looking terrified as she breathed hard. The mayor was there with her as they stood in front of the bandits. Wah, Sanji called out, hearts back and his legs twirled around. Makino, my love, are you alright? Nami finally had enough and yelled out, as she delivered a hard punch to his head, she can't see you dumbass. Nami, SWAAAN, he croaked out, a slight nosebleed starting up again as he fell to the ground. Makino, Mayor, Luffy gasped out. The mayor came forward and he said, I don't know what Luffy did, and I have no intention to fight with you because of it. But enough. He then fell to his knees and begged, I'll even pay you if you want, just please, let the boy go. I guess he's not such a bad guy after all, Usopp said, glad that this was going to end well. The bandit smirked. The old man knows how the world works, he said calmly. But, no, what? Chopper yelled out, his eyes popping out. He's not going to let Luffy go. Did you really expect him to? Nami asked angrily, for some reason, thinking of Arlong. Jerks like him never keep their word even if they give it to you. But it's too late now, the bandit went on. I cannot spare him, you see, he kicked Luffy harder. He made me angry. I cannot let a kid this weak insult me in front of my own men and get away with it. You started it, Luffy yelled defiantly. You mountain ape. Nice one, Zoro said lightly. I guess he was better at insults back then, but he can't do much like that. How can you say something like that? Usopp yelled him, don't you know what'll happen to Luffy? That's easy, Zoro answered while his eye on the bandit's sword, he'll die. That's a horrible thing to say. Luffy could get sliced into pieces here and you're standing there all calm. Nami yelled at him, and his getting upset will make a heck of a difference won't it? He asked, and they stopped yelling for him to say, whether we like it or not isn't the point. What is the point is that this is all ancient history. Besides, Robin answered as she looked at the bandit's irritated face, Luffy obviously survives. Let's just watch and see. Fine, the bandit, stomping harder on him one more time before he drew his sword, now looking annoyed, I've decided that I'm not gonna sell you. I'll kill you instead. Zoro flicked his thumb so his blade could be seen, though he knew that it was pointless, he couldn't help himself, they had all become increasingly protective of Luffy, especially after these last 2 years. The others were looking angry as well, some of them even drawing weapons, just aching for a chance to have a go at this jerk. Luffy, Makino screamed in panic. Please. The mayor cried out imploringly as he looked up, let him go. He's just a child. I was wondering why the bar was empty on such a fine day, a causal voice from behind them. They all spun around in time to see Shanks and his crew standing behind Makino and the mayor. So this is why, Shanks finished, looking at them all. Captain Shanks, Makino called out in relief. Oh good, Chopper cried out happily. Shanks will take care of everything. I hope so, Brooke said softly as they looked back to the helpless Luffy, still fighting to get up. Shanks grinned brightly as he came forward. If it isn't the bandits from the other day, he said before turning his teasing grin on Luffy, what's the matter, Luffy? I thought you said that you have a punch like a pistol. Shut up, Luffy snarled from where he was. I have to agree, now's not the time, Frankie said, posing. It's time to super kick some ass. Pirate, the leader said smugly, why are you still here? I suggest you leave and continue cleaning if you don't want to get hurt. However, Shanks instead began to slowly walk forward towards them, the Straw Hats moving out of the way for him, despite the fact that there was no need. The bandit leader pointed his sword at him. I don't know why you're here, but leave before we kill you. I'd love to see him try, Frankie laughed. Shanks didn't become an emperor for being weak after all. But Shanks kept walking towards them. Suddenly, another one of the bandits said with a cocky grin, didn't you just hear what he said? He raised a gun and pointed it straight at Shanks's head. Don't take another step or I'll blow your brains out. He cocked the gun, and the other bandits laughed. Shanks did stop here, but he didn't look worried. He was still smiling as if this was all his idea. Since you drew your pistol I assume that you're willing to use it. Shanks asked casually. Huh, the bandit asked stupidly. What are talking about? I mean are you willing to risk your life? Shanks asked calmly pointing to the gun in his face, these aren't toys to scare people with after all, you know. Nami, Zoro and Usopp all smirked at those words. Oi, what the hell is so funny? Frankie asked them, wondering just what was so funny at this moment. Yeah, fill us in on the joke, Sanji agreed. When we first met Usopp, Luffy intimidated him with that same speech, said Zoro grinning. He showed up at the shore and pulled out his slingshot and was about to shoot. Just those words were enough to scare him shitless. Yeah, Usopp laughed. Hey, he added when he realized what he said. You jerk. It is the truth, Usopp. Nami laughed a little until a gunshot rang through the air, bringing them all back to the matter at hand. When they looked up, the bandit with the gun was on the ground while the fat pirate named Lucky Roo was now standing there with the smoking gun, still eating a slab of meat on his knife. Everyone was staring at him in shock and surprise. You killed him. A bandit yelled. That was fighting dirty. Another cried out. Dirty. A tall man with slick, black hair tied in a ponytail and carrying a long rifle that was tucked into his yellow sash. Who did you think you were dealing with here? We never claimed to be saints. I think I like this guy, Zoro smirked. That's Ben Beckman, Robin answered. If I heard right, then he's the first mate of the Red Hair Pirates. In other words, he's badass, Sanji said grinning. We're pirates, Shanks proclaimed proudly. Shut up. The bandit leader yelled, this is none of your business. The good-natured look on Shanks' face just seemed to melt off to be replaced with great anger. Listen up, bandits, he said in warning. You can spill food me. You can pour drinks on me. Hell, you can even spit at me. I'll just laugh it off. But then his face grew furious as he said, but, no matter what the reasons, I won't forgive those who hurt my friends. Now for the last time, let the lad go. Shanks, Luffy whispered softly. Wow, Chopper cried out, stars sparkling in his innocent eyes. Shanks is so cool. I want to meet him. I can see why Luffy looks up to him, Sanji smirked. Shanks is definitely his main influence. But just then, the leader of the bandits laughed horribly as he asked, won't forgive you say. You bunch of pirates who float around on the sea want to challenge bandits. What a joke. Kill them all men. And like that, the bandits all raised their weapons and charged ahead. Amateurs, Zoro said shaking his head. They barely know how to use those things. I'll handle this, Ben said coming forward. I'm more than enough for them. Shanks just smiled at him as his friend strode forward, pulling out the rifle he had tucked in the sash at his waist, stance relaxed and casual. When the first bandit came at him, he pulled out his cigarette and used it to stab him in the face. That first bandit was down before the cigarette was. He then raised his rifle up as a weapon and in no time at all, the bandits were all lying face down in the dirt. Don't flatter yourselves, bandits, he told them, pointing the rifle at them as he lit another cigarette. If you want to fight us, you better bring a warship with you. Wow, Luffy whispered in awe. Luffy took the words out of my mouth, Nami smiled. Not bad, though they were just taking out these weaklings, Zoro added, his hand on his swords again as he watched Ben walk back to his friends. He liked this guy. If they ever met up in the future, he wanted to be the one who fought him. Staring at his defeated men, the bandit wasn't acting so cool anymore. In fact, he grew pale and was now backing away. Ah. Wait a minute, the kid's the one who started this. Shanks smirked. Aren't you a wanted man? He taunted him. He's so cool. Usopp and Chopper yelled out. Frankie burst out laughing. Yow, I really like these guys. Robin chuckled. They are something else aren't they? Looking desperate, the bandit threw something down on the ground. They didn't have long to wonder what it was for as soon as it hit the ground, it exploded to create a giant cloud of smoke. And they say that pirates fight dirty, Sanji said in disgust. A smoke bomb, they heard Shanks yell out. Come on kid, the bandit's voice rang out along with Luffy's protests. Luffy, Shanks called out. I can't see anything, Brook said as the smoke got thicker and darker. Ah. But I don't have eyes to see with anyway. Yo ho ho ho. What's happening? Chopper cried out. But it only continued to get darker until everything faded out. I've never seen a smoke bomb make everything this dark, Frankie said looking around. Though that's not such a bad idea for a new weapon, he added to himself. Idiot, the memory's obviously changing. Nami yelled at him. She was right, for soon, they were standing on the ocean waves, everything coming back into focus. They all stepped backwards in shock at what was happening. Their feet were submerged into the sea, but they were still floating on the unsettled waves as if standing on solid ground. Now this is interesting, Robin said with bright curiosity as Usopp, Chopper, and Brook all screamed out in terror. You don't see this every day. How is this possible? Nami gasped. How is any of this possible? Zoro asked as Chopper clung to his leg, as if terrified that he would fall into the water if he let go. We're standing on the ocean. Usopp screamed as Brook ran around in a panic. That does it. Now I wanna go back. Please let's just get out of here. It's not even wet though, Frankie said, lifting up his sunglasses so that he could look at his feet. He jumped up and down a few times, but still felt nothing. It's like it's all an illusion. Or a mirage, Nami added as everyone else slowly began to calm down. Now's not the time. Look at what's happened, Sanji yelled, pointing ahead. They looked up to see that the bandit leader was standing in a small rowboat with Luffy sitting as far away as possible from him at the other end. That's not good, Robin said, now sounding anxious. If he falls in, he'll die for sure. How can you be so calm about this? Usopp yelled at her. I'm calm about most things, she said coolly. But she's right, Nami called out, gripping the sides of her face in fear. Luffy can't swim. The bandit laughed darkly. We got away, he said smiling evilly at Luffy. They will never think to look for a bandit at sea. I only brought you as a hostage, but now there's no more use for you. I've always killed those who irritated me, you will be the 57th. You jerk, Chopper yelled out furiously, transforming into Horn Point. Wait, till I get hold of you. You'll wish that you were never born. Chopper, Zoro growled. There's no point in yelling. But he too was looking angry, as if he wanted to kill this man as well. Not if you die first. Luffy yelled at him. The bandit chuckled, smirking as he walked over and kicked him into the sea, laughing out, good riddance. Luffy, Usopp yelled in panic. They watched as Luffy flew through the air, as if in slow motion, before he hit the water. He ended up coming back up for a moment, but he was floundering in the sea, trying desperately to keep his head above water. The bandit laughed out loud, as if he couldn't think of anything funnier than watching the boy in front of him drowning. But what he didn't notice was the dark shape that swam underneath the boat. What's that? Nami croaked out, watching the dark shape beneath the waves. I think we're about to find out, Frankie said as the bandit finally stopped laughing as the water behind him rose up. Usopp, Nami, Chopper, and Brook all yelled out in panic as a sea king rose up, looking like a large oversized brown eel with glowing red eyes and blue fins. Where did that thing come from? Usopp bellowed out in terror. What? The bandit screamed out as he stared at it in horror. What is this monster? You can tell that he's never been out to sea if he doesn't even know what a sea king is, Sanji said, but he wasn't smiling this time, wondering what on earth was about to happen next. Just then, the sea king opened its mouth wide as it closed its jaws around the boat, swallowing the bandit whole. Now that's what I call, just desserts, Robin whispered. Can't you be a little more worried? Usopp yelled at her. Where did a sea king come from? Nami screamed out, they're hardly ever seen outside the Grand Line or the calm belts. Who cares? Brook screamed, now freaking out. Luffy-san is going to be eaten. Zoro and Sanji both leapt out, trying to attack the beast, but like every other time, they simply passed right through. Shit, Sanji screamed out, looking back at the creature. There wasn't anything they could do, all they could do was watch as the Sea King finally noticed Luffy who was now sinking. The Sea King paused, red eyes watching him before it charged. Luffy's terrified scream broke through the air. Luffy! They all screamed in terror. They heard Luffy's screams, saw the flash of razor-sharp fangs as the Sea King dove. For a moment, they feared the worst, forgetting that their captain was still alive. They couldn't see Luffy anywhere and there was blood in the water. But then, a head with bright, red hair broke through the surface with Luffy clinging to his chest. It's Shanks! Chopper yelled out as the two struggled in the water as the Sea King turned around, ready for another attack. But as it charged towards them again, Shanks looked up and glared hard, making it stop dead in its tracks. Get lost, Shanks said, his voice as cold as ice. The Sea King stared for a moment before it quickly dove beneath the waves and disappeared. Was that? Usopp whispered within a croak, sweat falling from his face. Conqueror's Haki, Robin said calmly. So he does have it. That was amazing, Chopper said, thinking back to Fishman Island when Luffy did that to the giant sea bear. That was just like what Luffy did before. Luffy looked up at Shanks, tears gathering in his eyes. Shanks. Thanks, Luffy, Shanks said with a big grin. Makino told us what happened. Thanks for sticking up for us. Shanks paused as Luffy started crying noisy tears. Come on, there's no need to cry, you're a man now. Usopp was breathing hard before he gasped out, his hand over his heart as he started to breathe normally again. They're okay. They're both okay. I wouldn't say that, Zoro said, gazing hard at Shanks, filled with a new kind of respect. Take a good look at Shanks. But, Shanks, your arm. Luffy cried, tears overflowing, your arm. The rest of the Straw Hats finally noticed where all the blood in the water had come from. Shanks's entire left arm was gone, all that was left was a bloody stump just past the elbow. Nami's gasped as she stared at the blood flowing out and Luffy clinging to Shanks's shirt. His arm, she whispered. He just like that. They all knew that Shanks had somehow lost his arm from when they met Rayleigh, but seeing how it happened and why. I can't imagine what must be going through Luffy's head right now, Usopp whispered, staring at him as he continued to cry. I think mostly guilt, Sanji said at once. He knew what it felt like to see someone give up a limb for you. The memory of seeing Zeph bone thin with that messing leg suddenly came to his mind. Like it's your fault, Nami whispered, tears in her eyes at the thought of Belmere smiling even as Arlong pointed the gun at her. And no matter what happens, you don't think you can ever make up for it, Frankie finished, thinking of how Tom was taken away from them because of him and his stupid battleships. If Shanks was in any pain, he ignored it as he gave him a gentle smile as Luffy clung tighter to him. Luffy, it's just an arm. I've got another one. I'm just glad that you're alright. I never knew what a great man he is, Usopp said in awe as they watched Shanks swim both of them back to shore. He couldn't stop the pride he felt for his father for sailing around the world with a man like him. I knew he was a strong pirate, but now I know that he's a great man as well. He needs to be treated, Chopper cried in alarm, watching the trail of blood. He'll bleed to death in less than 10 minutes if he doesn't see a doctor. He'll be fine, Zoro said. But there was a strange look in his one eye as he watched them near the shore where his crew was waiting for him. But I have to say, he's something else. It became dark again as the vision faded, but soon it reappeared. They were at the docks now with the red-haired pirates were just loading up crates of food and barrels of sake onto the ship. Usopp was staring ahead at the back of his father's head before he noticed that Luffy and Shanks were there, watching them work, with Shanks now having his missing arm covered up with a black cloak. So you're leaving for good this time? Luffy asked as Makino, the mayor, and the other townsfolk came to say goodbye. Yep, Shanks said brightly, tilting the straw hat back so that he could see the waves better. It's been a nice extended vacation, but we've stayed long enough. It's about time that we move on. He looked at him and asked, sad to see us go. Yeah, Luffy confessed, but he kept smiling. But I made up my mind. I'm not going to ask you to take me with you. I decide that I'm gonna become a pirate all on my own. Shanks then stuck his tongue out at him and teased, hey, I wouldn't take you even if you begged me. You don't have what it takes to be a pirate. For someone who lost an arm, he's surprisingly upbeat, Robin commented. Luffy blinked before his eyes narrowed in anger and yelled out, yes I do. At his voice, all of the other pirates on the dock turned to watch Luffy. One day I'll have a stronger crew than yours. And then I'll find the world's greatest treasure. You hear me? Someday I'm gonna be king of the pirates. So that's why he's so obsessed with becoming the king, Zoro said with a smile. Yo-ho-ho-ho-ho. Luffy-san is very determined. Brook said happily. And he's been keeping this promise all these years just because he was angry at Shanks. Nami asked, shaking her head. Why doesn't this surprise me? Oh, I don't think that he was really angry, Nami Swan, Sanji said, pulling his cigarette out of his mouth and blowing smoke rings. I agree, Robin nodded. I think that there's more to it than a promise. I can't help but wonder what else it is that drives Luffy. Shanks listened to Luffy's proclamation before he smiled, as if he was taking this as a challenge. Oh, he teased. So you're going to get a crew that's better than all of us. Well then, and slowly, he reached up to the straw hat and took it off so that he could place it onto Luffy's. This hat is my gift to you. Luffy stood still as a statue as Shanks said to him quietly, this hat is an important treasure to me, so you have to promise me that you'll return it in good condition. Shanks pulled away. And only after you become a great pirate. That'll be our promise, Luffy. Chopper laughed joyfully. Shanks is really nice. So that's why the hat's so important to Luffy. Yes, the man who once saved his life has been waiting for him out here on the sea for years. Brook said, now looking deeply touched by what he was seeing. It simply touches my heart. Not that I have one. Yo-ho-ho-ho. He's S-U-U-U-U-U-P-E-R. Frankie exclaimed, tears running down his face at the cute scene playing out in front of them. A more kind-hearted man you'll never find anywhere. Luffy is very lucky indeed, Robin said with a soft smile. Nami sighed wistfully. He is, she agreed. Luffy took the hat in his hands as he watched the Shanks board the ship. Makino came up behind him and stood with him, smiling as kindly as ever as she looked up to the crew and waved goodbye. Raise anchor, Shanks yelled, and set the sail. Aye. The rest of the crew yelled before they looked back and waved goodbye to everyone. All the Straw Hats, except for Usopp, who was staring at his father, was looking at Shanks. They watched his ship until it sailed away from them and disappeared over the horizon. "That's got to be the sweetest thing I've ever seen." Robin smiled as she watched little Luffy put the hat back firmly on his head and rub the tears away. "I get it now," Zoro said softly, his hand on Kuina's sword, remembering the vow that he made to her so long ago.